And salutations, and thank you for clicking on the video. Welcome to another edition of Mr. Desktop and Mr. Server. I'm Joe Collins, and with Jeremy O'Connell from CyberWeb Solutions. In this video, you're really going to find it informative if you're somebody who works with Linux, have a bunch of machines, if you do network administration, and it'll also be good for those of you who just want to know how to share files back and forth between a couple of Linux machines. We got a lot of information packed in here. We're going to look at different networking schemes, and we're going to introduce you to some concepts you might not know about. And we're also going to introduce you to a brand new tool that was authored by Jeremy O'Connell at CyberWeb Solutions, and it is going to be released to the public. When you see this video, you could go and get it. So, hi, Jeremy. Introduce yourself, say hello, and tell us a little bit about our new tool.
Well, hello, Joe, and everyone out there in Easy Linux land. Obviously, I'm Jeremy O'Connell, and if you haven't been following our past Mr. Desktop, Mr. Server videos, I suggest you go check them out on the Easy Linux channel. So as Joe said, we have a lot of information packed in here, and if there's a lot of interest from the community, we can do even more because networking is a wide, obviously covers a lot of topics. So what I did is when I made the switch from Windows last year, I was using it, I know, I had to hang my head in shame, but I was using Linux on the server only. I've never run Windows or anything like that, but I've used Linux and other Unixes on the server, but I was still on for my primary desktop on Windows. And one of the things that was holding me back, because I was looking starting last year, okay, I want to, by the end of the year, the end of 2016, I wanted to be running Linux on bare metal. And so I was going through all the lists, as a lot of people do. I need this app, that app, whatever. A lot of things carried over, but one thing was missing. There was a big hole that was critical, and that was a way to manage the servers, the networking equipment that I manage through SSH. And yes, I can hear what some of you may be saying. Well, there's the SSH command, which we will be reviewing shortly. And you can use things like FileZilla to make SFTP connections and that type of thing. But under Windows, honestly, I was using Secure CRT and Secure FX. And so those are there's another program called PuTTY that's open and used on a lot of systems as well. What Secure CRT does is it allows one to make a shell connection. And I would have all the accounts in there that I need to manage for clients, servers for myself, like I said, networking equipment, etc. And then I would use the Secure FX to make a connection if I wanted to, say, upload files. See, I used to run FTP servers. So back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when I would set up dedicated servers, I would set up things like ProFTP, VS for very secure FTP. But then I started dawning on me, why am I setting up a separate FTP server when I can just use SFTP and SSH into them? So when I started back now to more the present, I started looking on Linux. I'm like, well, okay, there's some programs that allow you to connect, and there's some decent programs, but there was no one program that allowed both. It was missing. There wasn't, okay, this one's good, like PuTTY and stuff like that, and you can just use the command line SSH, fine, to issue commands. But how do I get files up there easily? And we'll discuss some ways to do that. But I also wanted a way at times to just drop and drag GUI. Sometimes you just want to use a GUI, that type of thing, and you want to see it visually more than just at the command line. And so there was really no good tool for that. So I finally found one that was kind of leaning that way. That was written in Perl, but had a front end. And yeah, it kind of worked, but then it didn't have the other half. So I'm like, okay, well, what can I do? What tool could I have if I could dream up a nice tool? And that's where Connect2SSH comes in. It allows using open technology, there's no proprietary technology, to use the SSH command and a new command we're going to talk about, what's not new, but it's an underutilized, heavily underutilized command called SSHFS. Right. And so using that command, you actually can mount remote SSH shares to your local file system and use them either in your file manager or CD, LS into them, or it doesn't matter. It's like they're just connected to your computer.
Okay, so before we get any further talking about Connect2SSH, and we're definitely going to cover that in great detail, if you are somebody who is not an administrator, you are not familiar with all of the networking options available. What we're talking about here is just being able to have machines communicate with each other on the network and exchange data and files. So if you are somebody who uses a Windows machine or a Mac machine, then you're probably familiar with the idea of sharing a folder on your desktop that will appear on another folder and on another machine rather. And that's what we're talking about here. And I get many people who ask me, they say, well, how do I share files with Linux machines? Because, you know, Windows has everything built into the system. There's lots of tutorials. There's lots of guides. Well, so does Linux. But Linux, like in every other category, offers you lots of different choices. So the first thing that we want to do in this video, for those of you who are like Connect2SSH, what's that, what's SSH, is to go through the basics, and we will talk about the different file sharing schemes and the programs that are available, and then we're going to show you how you use the SSH suite of commands and utilities, and then we're going to show you what Connect2SSH does. So don't, you know, if you don't know what's going on, you don't know what we're talking about, stick around. By the end of the video, you'll be like, oh, okay, and you're going to learn a lot about networking. And also, I wanted to point out before we got very far with this is that Jeremy and I have talked about this a lot, and there's not a lot of people out there who are using the tools that we're going to show you. This is under-documented in the Linux community. However, all of these tools that we're going to show you are built right into your Linux computer. Most of them are already there. You just have to turn them on and configure them and use them. So that's kind of interesting that we looked around to see if other people were talking about this, and we couldn't really find anything.
Yeah, you're right.
So, Jeremy, let's get started. What's the first thing that we want to talk about as far as networking options in Linux?
Well, I think the first thing is to just touch base on what you said, and that is most individuals, even companies, when they come to the Linux world of doing things, they immediately go, how do I get Samba working, or Samba, how you want to pronounce it? And that is a nightmare of an issue to have to deal with, because Samba, it just, if you don't have the configuration just right, it's a hassle. And so there are things that make it easier. For example, my favorite file system in the world, ZFS, for many reasons, another video for why, it has Samba built in. And so it's just a few configuration lines, and then you're up and running. Whole lot easier than, say, taking Linux and then trying to build the Samba server on there and configure, etc. Makes it very easy. But still, you have to edit it. However, if you have a Linux machine, or even another Unix machine, I mean, even Mac does this, you have a user account, and you can connect to it with SSH. So why run a Samba network? Why have to deal with that unless you have an unfortunate individual has to have Windows and share files with it? But if you're all Linux.
Yeah, but even today, you know, back in the day, you'd say, well, if you want to share, if you got a mixed network, you got a couple of Windows boxes, you got a Mac machine, and then you got Linux, then the only alternative you really had was to use Samba. These days, you can have Bash with Ubuntu running in Windows 10. Therefore, you get access to all of these tools. So it's...
Well, you do. In all honesty, though, one of the little cool things we're going to show you is SSHFS. I honestly don't know if there's a Windows component of that or not. I probably should have looked that up. But seeing how I've migrated away from Windows, I did not look up. I do know that the SSHFS package is available for all major Linux distros. You can also build it, and it is available for example, FreeBSD. I'm pretty sure there's a Mac version. I recall seeing something out there for that. I'm not sure about Windows. So that's the one caveat there. So that would be.
Yeah. This video is about people connecting Linux machines to Linux machines. If you want information about how to set up Samba between a Windows and a Linux box, then you're going to have to do a lot of your own research, because you have to look at setting it up on the Linux side, and then you have to go look at setting it up on the Windows side. That's not anything that we're going to get into today. This is, for purposes of this video, we're talking about somebody who has more than one Linux machine running on a network, either in their house or their business, and they want to talk back and forth between those machines.
Correct. And so what I would personally do, just to and then we'll move off Samba, because Samba is a nightmare. And if you've ever tried to play with it, if you don't believe us, go try and play with it. And at the end, you'll be like, why? Who invented this crazy system? But
I have a video up on my YouTube channel. It's how to configure Samba in a very insecure way, I might add. Just if you absolutely have to use Samba and you want to get these machines to talk to each other and you're not worried about security, I have a guide on how you can write a very simple Samba configuration file that will do that for you. However, since that video has been posted, I have found out that that doesn't necessarily work with a lot of the routers that the ISPs are shipping, because those routers do not have DNS. They can't handle host names. So that disables Samba. Samba will not work on a router like that. It's got to have that host name recognition in there, or you have to be able to go in and hack it to get it to work, which is extremely complicated. So even Samba is not really as much of a option as it was, let's say, 2 years ago when I did that video.
And SSH doesn't need host names. You can put host names, but an IP is perfectly fine.
Yep,
so
I do mine with IP.
Yeah, so that's one thing. If you create accounts on a Linux machine, guess what? You're getting SSH accounts. I mean, you can set it to be no shell if you want. But okay, now the other way that's very common for sharing files, because you want to touch base on this. So Samba is a nightmare. And honestly, well, let me back up and say one final point. If you have a Windows machine, because maybe you have a holdout, or maybe you have a gaming rig, or you just haven't made the total leap there, personally, what I would do is I would just have one. I would put files in on a Linux share, which we're going to show you with SSH, and then just configure Samba to have one folder, that same folder being shared to, say, have like a Windows Linuxy share. So you don't have to keep adding new Samba users for every Linux box. So it's kind of like one folder that you're going to share with a Windows or Windows machine, and then the rest is all for Linux. But that's really it. We're not going to get into, like Joe said, the actual configuration, because it is really a hassle and a half. So that's what you hear all the time online. Samba, Samba, Samba. The other technology you'll hear a lot about is NFS. And so that's a network file system, which is definitely easier than dealing with Samba. However, one of the great advantages of SSH is besides it being very easy and very simple, as you'll see here, is that, because don't worry, as Joe said, we're going to show you tools here, and we're just talking at the moment. Then we're going to show you some meat here of actually issuing the commands and doing this, not just simply talking heads. But anyway, NFS is not really protecting your data like SSH. SSH is in that encrypted, secure tunnel. And so if a bug is found in OpenSSH, if that's your SSH server, when it gets updated, guess what? Your SSH tunnel is upgraded and updated. So the security, the encryption, it's built into the tool. And you can tweak that. And we're not going to get into all the tweaks. You can change different encryption schema and stuff, but it's built into SSH. NFS doesn't have the security that SSH has. And again, why? You're setting up a user on a Linux box, you're going to get access to SSH. That simple. And so those are the two main methods you'll see. There's some other proprietary methods. You can do iSCSI and try and mount do some other NF shares and some kind of other lower level things, although iSCSI is storage. But still, basically, you're going to hear NFS, Samba, and as Joe said, SSHFS, which will give you the same as you're going to see in a moment, will hook up to your local file system and work in your file manager. It's just not talked about. There's a few articles here and there, but it's a very underutilized tool that is baked into Linux, built in, ready for you to go. It's ready to go. It's ready to use.
The thing about NFS is that it's not natively running on your machine. So if you want to use it, you're going to have to activate the service. I don't think you have to install anything. I think it's already there. You're going to have to activate the service, and then you're going to have to figure out the configuration. And the thing about NFS is that once you get it configured, changing it, it's not dynamic. It's like what you're saying to is, okay, hook this machine to this machine, and every time it boots up, do that. Whereas with SSH, it is more dynamic. And you don't have to have that share up all the time. You can turn them on and off if you want to. You could route it any way you want it on your network, whereas NFS makes that a little bit more difficult. So
yeah, and another thing about like Samba is you have to put in like read-write permissions in a setup script or not a subscript, but an INI file. And it's like if you change the permissions and you forget to reflect that, then the user might not be able to access that, or maybe might not be as locked down as you think they do. Well, you go set up an SSH share on say a NAS or something that you have, and you just change the ch mod or mode, the permissions, it's done. There's no more configure. Oh, you don't have to go, oh yeah, I got to go edit this other configuration file and update the permissions, because now I don't want people writing to that. I just want them reading to that. There's just, yeah, it's crazy. I'm surprised this tool has never really gotten the traction it is, but that's what Joe and I are going to work on changing.
Okay, so now that we've talked a little bit about Samba and NFS, I'm sure that, like I said, if you've been looking around, you may be using those solutions right now. Let's talk about SSH, getting SSH started on your machine. If you are a complete new user to Linux, you may have heard of SSH, but you don't know how to do it. You don't know how to get it started. It's actually really, really simple. And that now you need to pay attention to your screen, because Jeremy's going to show us.
Yeah, actually, right before we do that, Joe, one thing I did want to ask you, did you want to briefly touch at this point on the network printer, excuse me?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to mention that one of the things that comes up a lot about Samba is a network printer. And if you have exclusive Linux machines, it is so incredibly, unbelievably easy to use the CUPS server to share printers on your network that it is not even worth setting up a Samba share, unless you're in a mixed situation where you have, like I said, you do have a Windows machine and you want to try and share printers from Windows to Linux or back and forth, which is something that I personally have never done. If you have nothing but Linux machines and you have one printer that you really, really like, you can use the CUPS share. You can accept that in the firewall, all that kind of stuff. And that is really robust, because if you use CUPS to share your printer, the systems that are mapped into that printer will find it every time. Even if you have a situation where IP addresses float, you have wireless devices, all this crazy stuff, CUPS just works. And not only that, if the machine that's hosting the CUPS printer is not up and running, the other machine will know that, hang on to that print job, and as soon as the other machine boots and the printer becomes online, it will just send it straight to it, which is absolutely amazing. Try that with a Samba share or even a Windows shared printer. They won't do it. They'll lock up, they'll screw up. It won't, you'll have to go crazy trying to fix that. So if you're going to share printers and you're running all Linux, then I definitely recommend using CUPS. And you can find out how to configure that real easy online. It's literally just one box that you click in the printer.
I can show them right now.
Yeah,
I opened up my printers. If you see. So I just went to menu printers here, and I'm using Ubuntu Mate, by the way, and I have the advanced menu on. So you would have to obviously do slightly different on another distro, or if you're in a different area. But anyway, so I have the printers box open here. I have a printer installed. So you'd have to install your printer locally on a machine. So, which obviously doesn't involve any network sharing at this point. You plug it into USB or however you're going to do it. Then you would select the printer, right click, go to properties, and you see these policies here. You can state and you can enable. I would just check all of these. So you enable accept jobs, it's sharing, it's enabled. You would just check all of those, click OK. If you want to right click over it and make sure that shared is checked, these two should be checked by using that properties box. So again, you click on the printer.
You can also go to servers there.
Yes, you can. And so you can go to servers up here as well, and settings, but it's all right in here. And usually it will work under at least a lot of Linuxes if you just go to properties here, go to policies, enable or check these three boxes. That's usually, I found more often than not, good enough. You can go to server here and go to settings as well, and you can publish the printer to other.
Publish the printer and then allow print jobs over the internet.
Yep, if you want, that's up to you, but yes, you can definitely do that. So you go to these settings, and again, you just go to server, you go to settings here. But this is this specific setup. Like I said, I'm using Ubuntu Mate. It could be slightly different if you're using a different kind of GUI or something else. So I've looked at this on about 3 or 4 different distros, and it's pretty much basically the same. So if you can find that printer properties, you can find that. And if you're using any Ubuntu, Linux Mint, even Debian, this is the window you're going to see. This is also the same one for Arch. It's all the same little program. So yeah, it's not going to be that much different. Yeah, so all you do is you try, and like Joe said, you can go look. It's not complicated to get it up. It's just literally a few clicks of the mouse, and boom, you're now sharing it with all. So then what you do is you simply go to your other computers, and you can add those as a network printer. they'll see it, they'll pick it up, because just like on Windows, if you're sharing something, you can go to view your network and be like, oh, I have this thing I can use. Linux will do the exact same thing. And then you don't even need to use, if you're on Linux, and with what we're going to show you here, you don't have to use Samba or any of that stuff. You're ready to go.
Exactly. All right, so let's jump into SSH.
Okay, so let's do SSH. Now, Connect2SSH will do everything I'm going to show you in a lot easier fashion. But first, I want to teach you and show you what the underlying tools are so that you know how to do it without SSH, to connect to SSH, excuse me. And then you also appreciate what Connect2SSH is doing. And like I said, you'll know.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we point out before we get any further. If you install Linux on your machine, SSH is divided into two programs. You have an SSH server and an SSH client. Every Linux distribution in the world, when it installs, SSH client is up and running. It's already ready to go. If you're going to be sharing things over the network from that machine, if you want other machines to get into the machine that we're talking about, you have to enable the server. So the SSH client already there, you don't need to mess with it. SSH server is the one you need to activate and configure. Just wanted to make sure I pointed that out.
Yeah, and I'm going to actually talk about that. So I have some notes here, and I'll go ahead and open my terminal, and then I'll make this a little bit bigger for you guys to see it better. So using my notes here, and I know it anyway, but if you have, more than likely, which you're good, well, in a home setting, you might be wanting to share files back and forth between two systems. And if you're going to do that, and you're going to use the methods we're going to show here, you would have to have, as Joe said, the server component working as well. If you don't really care about moving files directly to, say you have 4 computers, if you don't care about moving files directly, like I don't need to copy to, say, Joe's computer, he doesn't need to copy to mine. We just need a server. You have a desktop or a machine you're going to run as a central server. So Joe can put files on there and I can copy them off and vice versa. Then you could just set up the SSH server part, the daemon part, to run on one machine. But if I want to be able to allow Joe to copy straight to me and my machine, and I want vice versa, then we would both have to be running the SSHD daemon or the server part of it.
Exactly. So yeah, if you want remote access to that machine, you're going to have the server running.
Exactly. It just depends. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's really up to, this is something you as the listener have to decide. If you're a home user or if it's a business, it might already be decided for you and probably is, but you're going to have to decide, how do you want to set up your systems? It isn't locked in stone. You can obviously change it later off, remove a server, add a server, that type of thing. But again, just one more time, is how do you want files to be able to get from one machine to another? If you have 4 computers, I generally say, if you can, go ahead and just set up a central machine that can act as like a network share and run the server on that one. But if not, if you just want to be able to copy from A to B and B to A and A to C, you'll have to run the SSHD server on all of them. So let's go ahead and see.
Hold on. The other thing that I wanted to point out was that SSH has 2 components to it. We're talking about sharing files. If you want to remotely administer that machine, it's going to have the SSH server on it so you can log into it and issue commands to it. So in my situation on my little network here at home, every machine is accessible from every other machine. If I'm sitting down at one, I can jump into another. I can grab a file. I can tell the machine to restart if I want to, because I get shell access. So anything that I type into the terminal, I get. And so we're talking about, just to clear up any confusion, SSH is also good for transferring files and data back and forth, not just issuing commands to a machine.
Exactly. So let's see, how would you tell if you wanted to install the SSH, server daemon on your local machine, or if you you want to set a box up as a server, maybe have an extra spare box, and you're going to say, okay, this is going to be the server. Now you have to bear with me because I'll explain all this. I'm going to copy some commands. I'll explain them. Definitely so you know what's going on. But I'm in a virtual box, and sometimes the mouse gets a little squirrely on me. It doesn't quite go where I want it to. So just note that. So this first command, we're going to just check the status. What we're going to do is we're going to run this as sudo, because we have to be super user to do this. So we've got the all familiar sudo. Then we're going to do space system control, and we want to do space status space SSHD, which is the daemon. We just want to see what the SSHD daemon is doing. So I'm going to go ahead here back to my terminal. I'll paste this in. I'll hit enter. And then I have to enter in my password for my user if you haven't entered it. And actually, I think I mistyped that. Yes, I did. So let me do that again. So you can see here, it's actually loaded. And so if I get this, then we know that it's on the system. So that's, let me go ahead and exit out of this, and I'll clear the screen. If you get an error, then you will have to, let me go ahead here and remove that real quick. We actually had a little bit of issues getting this working, and it's really installed. And so I had a different machine set up, and so it didn't quite go according to plan. So
okay, well, while you're doing that, let me point out that on any Ubuntu-based distro, that what you do to get the OpenSSH server running is you will install a package called OpenSSH server. If you are running other systems, they handle it differently. For instance, like in Arch Linux, the server and the client are actually in the same package. So it's all installed. The only thing that you have to do in Arch Linux to get the server up and running is to type in sudo systemctl enable SSHD, and that will do that. This is systemd systems. So the syntax for enabling and disabling the server is slightly different on Ubuntu 14.04 and Linux Mint 17.3, but you really shouldn't have to mess with it that way, because when you install OpenSSH server in Ubuntu and Ubuntu-based distros, it automatically configures it.
correct. So because I had a different virtual machine, we had that installed than I was originally planning on using. So I issued the command. Obviously, like Joe says, well, I'm showing this on a Ubuntu Mate machine, so it will vary slightly as far as if it's there or not. But if you issue this sudo system control status SSHD and you get this loaded, not found, status inactive, dead, it says there's no such file. That means you do not have it installed. So let's go ahead and install that. You saw me remove it, so I'm just going to go ahead and issue. Now, this is obviously going to be using, as you can see here, the apt-get, because you're probably reading ahead. So this is going to be for Ubuntu or Debian type based system. So if you're using Arch or Fedora or something of that nature, you're going to, and there's my mouse not wanting to quite cooperate with me. And again, the command here is sudo, then space apt-get. I know you can use apt, I understand, but apt-get's still what I've been familiar with and what I use. Install OpenSSH-server. So I'll go ahead and do that just so you can see that in real time, because it doesn't take that long. And then as it goes through and installs this, it should activate it and enable it, and we'll check for that. I'll show you that. And I'll also show you which you can the commands. I'm not going to run them because it should be up and running, but I'll just show them to you in case they aren't, your system doesn't actually have them running. Like Joe said, I'll go ahead and clear the screen here and make it a little easier through the top. So now let's go ahead and once again, I'm going to issue this command right here. But if it for some reason didn't start, it's sudo, then system control, enable SSHD, and you would issue your start as well. But like I said, generally in most situations, it is going to just start for you. So I'm going to issue again, as you can see on the screen, sudo space system control space status space SSHD, and then you can see here it is now loaded. We don't get any errors. It's active. So this is the little component you would have to install in order to make connections, say to go, if Joe was trying to connect to my computer, in order to do some of the functions we're going to reveal. Really easy. It's known. You can see here it's listening on port 22, the default. And so that's how easy it is to get up and running. And again, obviously apt-get will have to be changed for other systems. So, or for other Linuxes that aren't Debian based. Now to connect to SSH, which you've seen Joe do, but since we're talking about this, we'll just issue a refresher, it's really simple. You're going to type in the SSH command, space the username, and then at a host name. So let's go ahead and do this. Now the host name could be an IP as well. It just has to be some way you have to tell the SSH where you want to connect. Now this is the client. So I'm going to connect to a user called CentOS or CentOS dev, and I'm connected to another VirtualBox machine running. So it is 245. So I'm going to enter in SSH space. The username in my case is CentOS dev at, and then in my case, the IP. Yours could vary, obviously, using a different username and different IP. I will hit enter. Now, you can see here this identity, and you might not get this. You might, it depends on what's set up. This is because I have some key information in my .ssh directory. Don't worry, we'll get to that. And it's basically saying, well, there's some mismatch there. So I'm going to go ahead and enter in my password.
the first time that you connect, it will ask you whether or not you actually want to connect to this host, and you will
That's
have
correct.
you'll have to type in yes.
That's correct. And I can show that in just a minute if you'd like me to, Joe. That's up to you. But I can show you where to remove it. You probably should know where to remove that. In fact, I actually discussed that later it's further down in my notes. So I'm going to enter in the password. Now, this is not the password for the local machine that I'm connected on, that I'm running this on. This is for the machine I'm connecting to. So I'm going to hit enter. It was testing, very secure password. And now we are connected. So you can see here, my prompt went from developer@Mate to CentOS dev at CentOS-dev, because that's the machine. So we've gone from my Ubuntu virtual machine here, Ubuntu Mate machine, to my CentOS virtual machine. And that's how easy it is to connect. Then obviously you just issue any commands to ls, or do whatever you need to do on the machine. To exit or get out of it, you can simply type in the word exit and hit enter. And now we have closed the connection. And you can see now the prompt has gone back to match developer@Mate or Mate. And so that's how easy it is to make a connection. Now, I'm going to show how you create some keys in just a moment, but you would simply enter SSH space -I space and then the full path or relative path to your key. And then you issue space, username, and the @hostname. And we're going to create keys in just a moment here. So I will show you actually using this command, but I know you're probably wondering, how would you connect with the key? Because see, that's the thing. A lot of people don't understand keys, and they're like, this is really confusing. I don't understand. It's sort of this mysterious. A lot of newbies especially go, I'm hearing I should be using SSH keys, but how do I create them? What are they? So we'll get to that in just a minute. And since I was planning, as I said, to show you on a clean virtual machine, but we had some audio issues, so I had to revert to a cloned one on another one. And the host, it was already set. So let me go ahead here, and I'll clear my host file here, so we can see that action, because if you're a newbie, you're going to wonder, what's this saying? And it might be kind of scary if you're not sure. So first of all, let me ls my, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, one of the things I wanted to mention is that if you are logging into a machine that has a desktop installed, like for instance, in your example, because you were using the CentOS server, there's no desktop there, it's a server, right? But if you have a desktop installed on the other machine, you can add one little option to the command, and then you can actually open an application on the other machine that requires a GUI, and it will open on the other machine, but you will see it on your screen. Now, this is not like, it's called X forwarding, and it's not like sharing the entire desktop, and it doesn't work with every single application out there. But if you are working on one machine and you want to open up a configurator, like a configurator of some sort, it's some sort of GUI, that thing is absolutely awesome, because then you can just open up that program and it's running on your local desktop. You can see everything that's going on, but it's actually happening on the other machine. So it's not just commands and files you can send back and forth. You can also send on the screen. SSH is the most awesome tool in Linux. You can just do monstrous stuff with it.
Exactly. Now, by default, and that just means the way that SSH sets itself up, and if you're adminning or you're sophisticated enough or want to learn, you can change the default area. But in most Unix-like environments and Linux-like environments, your keys and most of your SSH information is going to go into your home folder. So it'll be /home/ whatever your name is, in my case, developer, that's what I'm logging in as. And then there'll be a hidden directory called .ssh. If it's not there, you need to create it. And I'm going to show you that coming up here shortly. But we're going to go into we're going to ls, list the storage here for .ssh. And we will see here, we have some information here. We have, config, which I'm not getting into at this moment right now. I will in a moment if we want to get into this. But the known host is this file here, is where when you do the yes or no accept, where you'll actually save that information. The system will save it. So I'm going to actually remove that file. And so then when I reconnect, that should be gone. So I simply did an RM and remove that known host file. So now I'll just use the up arrow here, and I'm going to reconnect. And now we get that message that Joe was talking about, the authenticity of the host, and it's giving this can't be established. So it's asking, do you want to accept this fingerprint? And watch, Y will not suffice. It says, it's basically no, Y is not good enough. You must type in, because sometimes you can put Y as a shorthand for yes. In this case, it is not good enough. So you type in yes if you accept it. If you don't, then obviously you could accept no or just cancel the command. And now you'll see here it's been added, warning, permanently added to the known hosts. So, and then it's asking me for the password of the actual the username for on that box I'm trying to connect to. Well, okay, I guess I'll connect just for the sake of demonstration. But if you ever need to get rid of that, I'll go ahead and exit out of that, clear that. Once again, that is stored. I'll go into it in the .ssh directory. It's hidden. That dot is hiding it, and that is the known host file. So if I go ahead and cat that, just to show you the known underscore host file, you'll see here there's one entry. And as you connect to more machines, this file is going to build up and build up and build up and build up. Now you might wonder, why even store that? Well, in general, you don't want the fingerprint to change. So if you're connecting, say, to a web server, and all of a sudden it changes, and you're saying, well, I know that server wasn't reconfigured, then that's basically Linux's way, Unix's way of telling you, whoa, you might be connecting to a host you don't think you might be connected to a different host than you think you are. So there could
exactly,
be
and it'll give you a warning message that's very plain and easy to see. It'll tell you that something's changed here, something's fishy. We don't know what's going on. What do you want to do?
So if you've updated your server, if you've changed it somehow, you're on a web serving situation, you moved it from server A to server B, and you're connecting to your website, then that's fine. But if you're just doing daily, connecting to your website or one computer, and you're like, nothing was changed, and if you're the one who's supposed to be administrating it, and you know nothing's changed, that's good. Or if you can call someone or say, did anything change? Because I wouldn't connect automatically unless you know something has definitely changed. And that's the way of Linux and other Unix is warning you. So this information is stored again. It's your home directory, your username, in my case, developer, then it's .ssh, because it's a hidden directory, and then it's the known host right here. And that's where, well, once again, the mouse is a little off, as it tends to do in virtual machines, but it's this known underscore host file. That's where it's saving that information. Anything else to add at that point? Because I'm going to work with keys, Joe, but I just want to know if you had anything to add.
No. I don't have anything. You keep going with the keys.
Okay. So now I talked a little bit about connecting with the I, because I just wanted to show you how you do that. We're going to actually do that in a minute when we generate one. But let's go ahead to get to creating keys. And as I said, keys are something that a lot of new people are like, I know I should be generating. As I said, I don't know how to do it. What is a key? Well, see, there's two different ways to connect to SSH. Well, two main ways anyway, is with a password and with a key. And the great thing about a key is it's a lot more secure, because instead of having to type an 8-character password, a 10-character password, whatever, you can use a long key. And you can make it stronger by making the key longer. And that's basically the bit size. And that's what a key is. However, the best security is a key that actually has a passphrase in addition. And I have explained this in previous videos with Joe, because if you have a key without any passphrase, which is basically a password, then if Joe had that and I stole his key, then I could just connect to any device that would accept that key. However, if Joe had...
So actually, yeah, if you do a key and then you put a passphrase in the key, that's double protection. Somebody could get the key, but they couldn't use it.
Exactly.
Now on my local... Yeah, on my local network, I do not have passphrases on my key. I'm not terribly worried about somebody getting a hold of that key. My entire SSH network is not broadcast on the internet, so I'm not terribly worried about that. So I use it as a convenience thing. If I have a key on a machine and then I go to hook up to it, it doesn't ask for a password. The key's there. That's my authentication, and it lets me direct in. However, if I was going to either broadcast one of these machines on the internet where anybody could see it, or I was going to do this on a remote server, then I would generate a key with a passphrase.
Exactly. And so that's what you want to, as I was going to say, you want to use a passphrase a lot of the times to secure the key. So you have to enter the passphrase to basically decrypt the key, in essence, for it to be used. Now, if you have an auto mount that, say, you load your Linux of choice, and you're going to then mount say from your NAS, you're using what we're going to show you coming up, the SSHFS command, I probably wouldn't create a key either, because you don't want to have it stop and ask you for a key. So I can definitely understand that. But there is some security risks there by not having one. So how do you generate a key? Well, it's very easy. You've probably been looking at the screen as I've been talking. The command is SSH-keygen for key generation, then space, and then there's a -T for the type. Now, there's more than the 2 types I have here, but these are the 2 recommended. There's like a DSA or whatever, but that's no longer recommended. What's recommended is RSA, the most widely supported right now of still strong ones. And there's this newer style key called ECDSA. And if you really want to geek out on this, you can go read on the internet the debate over, well, this one is stronger, slightly stronger key. However, there's some trade-offs. This one's, the ECDSA is a little slower, although it is a slightly stronger key, even though it's got less bits, and we'll get to that in a second. But I still personally right now am issuing RSA keys. That's just me. But again, you can geek out and read about on the internet which one, and there is some people say you should only be using ECDSA keys now. So you choose your type, -T. Those are the only 2 I recommend at this point. So if you're listening to this recording 3 years from now, things can change. So after your -T RSA, you issue -B for your bit rate. I at least use, let me put it this way, nothing below 4096. That's just my minimum. I think you can go overboard, and at some point you have diminishing returns, but I just do 4096, or sometimes I'll up that to 8, but generally I just do 4096. Then this is really the only, if this mouse would cooperate again on the virtual machine, this is all that's, well, I'll use the arrow keys, fine. This is all that's required when I'm highlighting. Technically, you can just issue a key gen and it will generate it anyway, but this is all that I consider ultimately required anyway. However, I like to do a little bit extra, and I'm going to train you how to do it, how I view a more professional, quote, right way, if you will. So we're going to do space -C, because an uppercase C, I should point out, it's a lowercase t, as you can see, a lowercase b, and an uppercase C. So this is a comment, and I like to put in comments so I know later on when I'm looking at a key, what was this key for? Because if you start generating a bunch of keys, you might think, well, I have 8 keys. I can't remember what was this key? So anyway, a -C and then space, and then between quotes, you can put a comment. Like you could put your machine name, like if it's your Dell or if it's your HP, or you could be more, this is to my NAS, or whatever the key is for. So it's a comment. Not required, but again, I highly, highly recommend it. Then after, again, that's between quotes, and so don't use any quotes in there. You have to omit any quotes because that's what's wrapping it. Then you issue a space, -F, and then the -F is for the file name, and you can name your key. Again, not required, because by default, if you're issuing an RSA, it should be ID_RSA. I like to name my keys because you might want to have multiple keys, and I just don't want the system just throwing it in anything. So I want to know where my keys are going, because I literally have hundreds of keys that I've generated. So -F is how you generate the file name instead of have the machine pick it for you. So let's go ahead and let's issue this. And I think I have a machine key file in there. So let me go ahead and delete that. Again, as I've said, I know it didn't quite go according to plan, the virtual machine I wanted to use. So I'm just deleting it. So forget that happened. So now I'm going to go ahead and copy this command. So once again, we have the key SSH-keygen, and then we have our type RSA and the bit rate and all that stuff. So we're going to have my machine. I'm going to hit enter. So now you can see here, it says generating the public/private key pair for RSA. Now I can enter the passphrase. This is that passphrase I was talking about and Joe was talking about. So if you don't want a passphrase, you just simply hit enter, and I'll show you. Yeah, and I'm going to show you how you can change that in just a few moments here. Hit enter. You hit enter again to confirm it, and now you'll see, okay, the system has generated a key for you called my machine key, and it always adds the public key as .pub. And you can see here the fingerprint, and with the SSH, the SHA-256 hashes, if you really care about such things, it's there. And then you get some kind of random imaging art thing. So, whatever. I don't think the programmers put that in there. So I'm going to go ahead and clear the screen now, and we'll ls this, and you will see that we have now the keys here. So this is the private key, and we'll see if my mouse wants to cooperate with me here. This is your private key. The private key you never share. That's identifying you or your device in essence. You never want to share that with the world. That should be kept to you. And if you're in a system administration setting and you have 2 or 3 guys doing it, you could use the same key, but really just generate unique keys for everybody. However, this is private to you. This public key is, you can share that. this is what you're going to have to put on remote devices you want to connect to. So we're going to, and I'm going to show you that here. We need to now, that's the next step, because now we want to log in with a key instead of just logging in with a password. So how do we do that? Well, we have to take this public key. So there's a few different ways of doing this. Well, let me show you the shortcut, and then I'm going to show you the way so you really understand this. And look, in this video, we're throwing a lot of information to you, and I understand that. So you're probably going to want to watch this video several times to really digest all this. We're just going to get the information out there. So the way to copy this with a command, if you want, is you could issue here SSH -copy -ID space, and then your username and the @ in the host name. So if I wanted to, I could issue this command. And for me, if I go back here, if I was going to do this, as it says here, so it'd be SSH copy ID. So I'd issue SSH copy, helps if you spell it right, ID, and then we could use the user I want to connect to, in my case, CentOS dev @ and then we would issue however you connect to the device, either by IP or some type of qualified domain and host, and I could hit enter and it will copy it. I don't want to do that because I want to show you guys where it's actually putting this information, so you have an understanding of what this is doing and how to change it. You get a much better control when you know what the underlying technology is doing. Okay, so where does this go on the remote computer? Okay, so we're gonna have to connect to SSH, and it's gonna go in this authorized _key. So let me explain all this. I understand you might be going, what? So just to make things a little easier, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna cat the public key because we're gonna need this information. So let me go ahead and cat the public key. And by the way, I'm using tab to autocomplete. That's why suddenly things autocomplete. So if you're a newbie listening to this and all of a sudden it's like, how come all of a sudden things just jump real quick? Because I hit tab to autocomplete. Now, if you look here, my machine, that's because of if you recall the comment that I use, that's sticking in here. So later, if I look back at this, I'll go, oh, that's right, that's right. In reality, you probably want to put like HP computer or Joe's computer or something or Joe computer, something like that. That's a little bit more descriptive than just my machine. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to highlight all this. I'll start from this side, I hope, if it wants to cooperate with me. And as usual, there we go. So you need to copy all the way from SSH-RSA, and that's just because we have an RSA key. If we had used the other type of key, it would say it'd be dash, and then it'd give that, that type, because basically it's just telling SSH, okay, this is an RSA key. So I'm just going to copy this real quick. And now we have our key. So this is the public key we need to put on the remote machine. So I'm going clear. And then I'm going to make a connection, a standard connection to that machine. And you might be saying, but this is a lot more trouble. Yes, it can be. And so you might want to use SSH copy ID. But I just, again, want to train you and show you guys where this is all going so you have a better understanding. And it helps if I type in my secure password testing. Okay, apparently. Do I have cap locks on? Okay, there we go. No, it did not. It failed. It must be. In a video, it would be giving me problems. Come on, CentOS. Why are you rejecting my password?
Are you sure you're logging into the same server?
Yes. Oh, I saw. Yeah, maybe you caught that and you're going, Jeremy, it's not working. Yeah, I didn't put the dev in there. Sorry. I'll clear the screen so once it connects. I forgot the dev. It was doing exactly. Okay, so now that we're in here, let me go ahead and ls all. Because
and that's an example of SSH doing exactly what it's supposed to do.
Exactly. And I just typed in CentOS.
Let him in there.
Yeah, and forgot the CentOS dev. That was my username. So I was a username error, and it was a user error, me. So,
yeah, you were logging into like one of your main servers there in your lab. It's like, no,
yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I had the right IP. I had the right IP. And no, I don't use CentOS for any of my usernames anywhere except for this development stuff. So none of my live equipment has CentOS anywhere for login. So, okay. So now that I'm logged in, I ls the directory. And by the way, I know you technically don't have to have the second L if you're staring at that. I'll just show you real quick. I just a long time ago just started doing ls. I just kind of often type LL because it's the way my brain started working. Anyway, side note. Okay, so you have to, the machine you're going to connect to that you want to SSH into, and this key is going to also work for SSHFS, is you have to tell that machine you're going to connect to, hey, use my private key. That's the key I want you to use and authenticate with. So you need to put the public key on the machine you're going to connect to. So again, I'm connecting in my example to a CentOS virtual machine from my Ubuntu Mate virtual machine. So the private key will be on my Ubuntu Mate virtual machine, and the public key needs to be on the CentOS machine. So I need to put this, let me go back to my notes so I can show it to you. I need to put this public key into the authorized underscore keys file, and it will be in the .ssh directory. Now, you can technically change this if you're savvy and want to go look that up, but that's the default. So I don't know about you, but I don't see a .ssh directory, and this can happen, especially on like CentOS boxes and stuff like that. It doesn't auto-generate, at least in a lot of cases, unless it's in your skeleton directory. Yeah, that's more advanced stuff. There's no .ssh directory. So what do you do in that situation? Well, no big deal. You just create it. It's pretty simple. So we're going to do a make directory .ssh, and now if I ls, you'll see that we have our .ssh directory. So I'll go ahead and CD into that, and then I'll clear that. So now you can see here the prompt's changed. I'll go ahead and clear that. So all we need to do now, and I like to use VI. I know some people are like, VI, use Nano, Pico, whatever. I'm a VI guy, so yeah, I can hear. Anyway, so I'm going to VI this.
VI guy.
So
I'm not a VI guy.
I know a lot of people are. A lot of people are like, "Why are you still using VI?" I know.
Nano rules.
No, VI does.
Death to VI.
Right, there is, and there's Vim. That's like anyway. So I'm going to VI this, and we need to create a file. Well, if I ls this, and I'll show hidden. There's no authorized underscore keys file, so we need to create one. And I could do touch it and create, but nah. I'm going to go ahead and type in VI space authorized keys, hit enter, and now I'm going to hit I, and I'll simply paste this in here because I goes into insert mode. You can see down here, you hit escape to get out of insert mode. I hit the colon, hit X because that will write it and close it, so it's a faster way than doing WQ. So I'll hit X. We now have saved that. If I ls this again, we will see our authorized keys there, and I'll go ahead and cat this. Just to show you, we can see the key has been inserted in there. So now I can connect with the key. So we should be good. So let me go ahead and exit out of the CentOS box. So we have closed that connection. And now let me connect using a key. So what we can do here is, let's go back. I'll show you the command, which is very simple. But it's SSH space -I, then the full path or relative path to the key itself, your private key now, not the public key, but the private key, because the private key has to match the public key. And then you would issue space, the username, and the @ symbol, and do the right username, Jeremy, right? Okay. @ and then your host name. So let's go ahead and do that. So if I ls this directory right now, here's my private key. It's my machine, well, my underscore machine underscore key. So since I'm sitting in the .ssh directory, I can just issue that file name without any additional paths. So we'll do SSH space -I. I can hit my machine, hit tab, it auto completes that, hit space, then do my username, which is CentOS dev, and then you have to put in my case, it's 245 because that's where the computer is located. I hit enter, and then you see it logged us right in without asking us for a password, logged us right in. The prompt changed from developer @mate to CentOS dev @CentOS-dev, because again, as I said, this is just the host name for this machine. Probably should have named it something else because these are very similar to each other. But anyway, so we're now on the machine, and you saw it just took us right in. Now, again, a network share, which we'll show when we get to the SSHFS part, and then show you my utility to make this a lot easier, because my utility negates having to enter all this. Go ahead.
Let me point one thing out. That command where
Sure.
you told it exactly where the key was, if the key is in the default location in .ssh that it can compare it, then it does. You don't need to put that in there. It just you can just do a standard SSH command like SSH joe.joesmachine.com, and it'll go straight to it.
Correct. That is correct, and that's definitely what is a good point, and what I was going to bring up shortly. If it's in your .ssh directory, and that's how most devices are configured, then you technically, it will always source that directory. If a key is presented, it will say, okay, I have a key that matches this, try and use it. I personally don't put my SSH keys in .ssh. I have them in other directories, so I always have to specify. And let me just show you real quick, if we were in another area. Let's say we weren't, my present working directory is developer. So if I wanted to just show, I just like to be thorough. to show people how this works. If you had, say, your key in another directory, like you say wanted to create your username /keys or your username /data /SSH /internal keys or whatever, that's not going to be in your default path. So in order to do that, though, I can actually enter in the full path to get to that key, and it will complete. I'm just using the tab to autocomplete, so I don't have to keep typing this in. And if Jeremy, if you'll please type in the correct username this time, it helps. And you'll see here now, after hit enter, it connected me, because I've told the machine where the key is, and I gave it the full path. It never hurts to enter a full path, folks, because the full path tells you exactly where the file is. So, but Joe's right, absolutely right. If you do .ssh and you put your keys there, technically I don't have to. In fact, it should work because my key's there. Let me just go ahead and connect that way, just to show you what Joe's talking about, because my key is technically in my .ssh directory. So, well, actually didn't pick it up. So there you go. Sometimes it doesn't. That's why I still like to specify, when you're not doing the ID_RSA key, it sometimes picks it up, sometimes doesn't. But actually there's a way to do that. And this is a little bit advanced, but I think some of you might like this. Watch this. If I go, let's see, my present working directory. If I go into my SSH.SSH directory, I go to, you can create a file called config. You see that config there? There's already one in here. So I'll just edit that. So you would create it if it doesn't exist. I know, hated VI, warning. So you see here, you can actually specify, you can create a host file, or you can create your host and actually tell it what files to use. So you see that error? I'm actually glad it errored out. So what you can do is you can say, whenever I connect to this IP or this host name, say, you see the IP, but the host name could be, say, a website or a host name like myserver.mydomaintld.com or whatever. Use this key. So if I go ahead and save this, and I cat this for you so you can see I made those changes, I'll clear this. Now, if I connect, whereas before it gave me that error, so I'm actually glad it gave me that error. It should just connect using that key, because we told it, look, when I connect to this host, just use this key, please.
Exactly.
So there, it worked because I told it in that config, hey, when you see this host name, use this key. So you can actually tell it even non-default locations or custom keys, so you don't have to specify that -I. So that's a way.
Well, the other thing to point out is, because at this point somebody's probably going, you expect me to set this up on my home network, which is being broadcast? No. If you do it, if you just take all the defaults, in other words, you generate the key, use the copy ID utility to put it on the other machine, you let it go into the regular SSH directory, you don't have to do any of this stuff. It will all, from that point on, you will be able to do directly, and you won't have to do any of it. What Jared's doing here is showing you that you can really configure and customize this. If you have a lot of machines to deal with, you want to keep up with your keys, you're an administrator, yeah. For somebody on a home network or 3 machines, that give you the basics and show you how to do that and say, do A, B, C, and D, and you get this. What we're doing is we're digging a little deeper here. So don't freak out and go, well, I'll never be able to use that. It's actually pretty easy.
Exactly. I agree totally with Joe. I'm showing you the easy way, and then just diving more in for those who are there, or if you're not there yet, just take the easy route, and then you will, as you learn more, you'll be able to come back, watch this video again in 4, 5, 6 months, a year, and you'll be like, oh, I understand what's going on.
That's the way this is. Sure, that's understood.
So anyway, that's pretty much what I showed you here, going back to my notes, doing config here, and setting up host names. And if you want another host name, you simply would, well, let me call that file up real quick. If you want another, I'm not going to put a bunch more in here, but if you want another host, you may be going, how do I put in more hosts? I could just simply come here and simply put in, say, we'll just do insert, say, another host, and I could put in, say, just another host. You just simply duplicate and just keep having another host and another one. And anyway, I'm not going to save this, but that's how you specify it. You can go onto the internet and research, because you can put a lot more besides this identity stuff that I have here. You can actually have all kinds of things.
Oh yeah, you can dig really deep into that stuff. Yeah,
and I'm not going to get into every single thing. Yeah, you really can. But if you're interested and you want to know more, by all means, you can get really crazy with that config file. Okay, so I pretty much showed you where the keys are in my notes. I have saving keys, and they're in the .ssh directory. You can change that, by the way, if you're an admin or you're just a tinkerer and want to change that. I showed you using the config file how you can auto load. And let me show how you change the pass key, because we don't have a pass key, right? It just logged us right in. But let's say we want to put a pass key on there. Well, you just simply use the use the same command as we did up here. So if we go up here to our SSH-keygen command, only what we're going to do is we're going to call the key with -f, which remember is our file name, which is optional, by the way. And then we have, in my case, my_machine. And then you just do space -p. So let's do that. And again, if this mouse will cooperate, sometimes I have to say, VirtualBox gets a little bit squirrely. Okay, so I'm going to clear this so we can just get a nice, and I'm going to, well, just ls this. So we can see here's my private key. And if you had 10 keys in here, or 5 keys or 4 keys or whatever, you need to select the right key. I'm going to paste this. So once again, we're going to use the SSH keygen again. There's -f. So we're going to load this key because we want to change the passphrase in this key because there is none, remember. And we're going to do space -p. So I'm going to go ahead and enter. Now we have to enter a new passphrase. So I'll just enter in testing and testing again. And now we have a passphrase. So now if I were to connect to that machine, there it is. That is weird. Why didn't it not? Oh, wait, hold on. That's definitely not the behavior it should. Hold on. Okay, let me show changing it again, because now we have to enter the old passphrase again. I think because we've connected, it remembers it is an issue right now. So you have to enter in the old passphrase, then you can enter in a new passphrase. Testing 2. I think the thing is because well, okay, I didn't enter the right ones here. Let me do this correctly here. So SSH keygen -f my_key. Well, basically I'm calling my key. You have to, when it does have a password on here, you have to enter in the old one. So I've entered in my old one. Now I can enter in the new one. Hopefully I typed it in. Okay, now let's try connecting again. See, we've made a connection, so I think it's just remembering the connection, unfortunately.
Well, we've already done it once.
Yeah, and I think it's just knowing we can log it. It's already decrypted the key and storing it is the thing. But that's how you would change your key, your passphrase. Now, if your key gets stolen, because you might be going, well, great. What happens if my key gets stolen? Which you're just showing me, Jeremy, doesn't not protecting me. Well, what you need to do then, in that case anyway, is regenerate a whole new key. Anyway, you don't want to stick with that old key that's been compromised. So, and I've showed you how to change the key. I mean, you can change the key the same way. In fact, let me go back and connect just one last thing, and then we're pretty much done with this discussion. So when I come back here, and I'll clear this to get back to the top, if I ls this, well, you can't see it because remember, dot is hidden. So if I go into my .ssh section or directory, and remember, we're on the remote computer now. We're not at my desktop that I'm showing you here. And we view this, well, VI, the authorized keys. If I wanted to get rid of and change keys and say this key had been compromised, or I just wanted to change it, I could just simply come in here, delete this, and insert and add another one. And then I would have save it, and then my key will have been changed. And as soon as you do that, none of the old keys will work. It should just auto throw those keys out. For new connections. If a connection's already established, it's already established. Mm-hmm. Now, one other thing I just realized, you can have multiple keys. So to do multiple keys, you simply, I blew that one away. You could, this is going to be the same key, which obviously you would not want to do, but let me just copy this key. If you want to know, well, how can I have 3 or 4 keys? Say you have one account, a shared account, and you want to have 10 people connecting to it with their own keys instead of sharing a key, which is the best way to do it. You could simply put in multiple keys. So you just would come in here, do insert, and then you could just paste in another key. And you could paste in another key, and you could paste in another key. And now if I were to save this, I would have 4 keys. Of course, they're all the same, and that's not really smart, but you get the point. So it's just 1 key per line, and that way you can have one account that you have 10 keys to or 5 keys to. So that way, if you have 5 administrators or 5 people on your network, such as every family members, they can all connect to one user account on your NAS or your little box you bought, but you all have separate keys. Now, Connect to SSH will make some of this easier for you, and you're going to see that. We're just explaining the basics. This is a big class, folks. This is a big class with a lot of information.
So, yeah, so now that SSH is installed, up and running, we can connect. I think now we want to talk about some of the tools that you can use some of the manual tools that you can use to move files around and manipulate things, right?
That's right. Now, we're focusing on SSH and SSHFS, so I'm not going to go into great detail of this and show this in great detail or anything, but Joe said, let's touch base on this because we want to just let you know what's out there, but we're trying to get the word out about SSHFS and everything. So still, once you make a connection, once you have the ability to make a connection and you've installed your keys, you've done that type of thing so you can make a connection to a remote system. The common one, and Joe's been using this a lot, is SCP. So I have two commands on here. I have on the screen. I'm not going to actually run this because I'm just going to give you the command. SCP is secure copy. So you could secure copy a file. So in this case, source file, you'd put in, let's say you had a meeting, or you're a home user and you just created a great new file in GIMP or something. You want to show it with the family or whatever, but you don't want them on your computer because you're doing, secret stuff like learning about Linux or whatever. So you could issue SCP, just as it says, space, and then whatever the file name is or the path to it. And then it would be space, the username that you're going to connect to. So the computer you're going to put it on, what username you're going to connect to. In my case, it would be using the same information. It would be CentOS dev at the host name. In my case, what I've been showing you guys is 10.0.0.245, and then colon, and then the path to the destination where you want to put it. Where do you want to put on the destination server?
And
Go ahead.
That colon represents the home directory destination. So that's what colon does. If that colon there, because they're telling it what the path is. SCP works with all of the same flags that you would put on copy command, so you can move directories. SCP-R, -R will do that. If you just want to update a directory, it's SCP. It's pretty stands, and then the next one up from that would be Sync. Then Rsync.
Do you want me to show this, or do you want to just go?
Stuff.
Do you want me to go show this, or should we just go over it? Because I mean, I could, but
just show Rsync. Let's do a sync run real quick, because that one's a little bit more than SCP.
Okay, SCP. The other thing, real quick, before we move on, -R is if you wanted to copy a directory. So you can see here it's SCP space -R, capital R space. Then you could put in your source directory, like say you wanted to copy in your notes directory. So on your computer, your local computer, your file. So it'd be notes / and then you would just repeat the same information as above. So as you can see, the only difference between a file and a directory is this -R for recursive. So okay, so you don't want me to. So then, as Joe started to get into, then the other one that's very common is Rsync, and so Rsync can also make connections as well. You can actually technically connect with SSH and then Rsync.
If you just issue Sync or SCP, it assumes that that you're going to use SSH, and it creates an encrypted connection so that your data is moving through the SSH tunnel and it's encrypted and all that stuff. You don't have to put SSH up for host or anything. Just all you got to do is Rsync from.
Yeah. Although if you connect with SSH like we did, if you already have a connection, you can just issue Rsync by itself, because you can Rsync to local folders or files. But anyway, in this case, if you were going to connect to, let's say, in our example here, we're discussing just connecting to a remote system that you're not already connected to. So there's no connection. There's not a pre-existing SSH tunnel or anything. So what you would do here is you'd issue, and Joe said to show this, so that's fine. We would do Rsync, and then the way I do it is -A for archive, so it just picks up everything. Z will compress it. And look, folks, there are a lot of different flags, so you can go research. I mean, there's a bunch of flags that you can set.
Just look up Rsync. There's lots of guides that will tell you what stuff does. And there's a version called GR. I've covered those to use as a tool. It actually works with this stuff too.
Exactly. So it's Rsync, then -A, -Z is what I use. N is for testing, so we'll do that in just a second. So you can add the N to make sure it's going to do, because look, Rsync's powerful. Rsync will happily delete your data. It has no problems deleting your original source data if you misconfigure, if you type in the wrong flag. It'll say, okay, fine, hey, your originals are gone. Thanks.
Yeah,
Anyway,
Rsync is powerful, and you have to be very careful with it because you can configure it in such a way that it will literally blow out an entire file. So you have the in there, which puts it in dry run mode, and you can just see what it's doing.
yeah, because you can literally delete your whole computer if you try and rsync, say the slash, like you're doing a full system backup. If you do it incorrectly, it'll just delete everything. Well, it can't delete itself, but it will start deleting enough of it that you could really blow out a computer. Okay, so as I was saying, then it's dash, and then dash dash delete will mean that it will delete everything on the remote connection to make it match the source connection. And so then what you do is after you have typed those in, and I'll show it because Joe said give you an example of it, then you would type in whatever you're trying to rsync, and yes, the mouse is not quite. So you would then you would enter whatever, like your file name, like your, say, the notes / directory, or you would enter in, say, I don't know, some tax document .doc or whatever. If it was a Word doc you were saying editing on Linux and you had to send, you want to make a backup copy, and then you were going to send that to, someone still using crazy Windows or whatever. Then you can see here that there's a username. So whatever username you're going to connect to. In my case, it'd be, to stick with the same theme, it would be CentOS dev @ and then whatever the host name is, an IP or some type of qualified domain, : and then where do you want to stick it on the remote destination. And if you want, you can include a key using the SSH command -- if you want to include a key. That's if it's outside, if you have to log in with a key and it's required to log in a key, because you can actually set up your SSH server to only accept keys. And if it's not in your default location where it can't find it, then you might have to include the SSH-I command and with your key file. So let's go ahead and let's create something and run this. So I think I'll get out of
And
this.
one thing I want to point out is when you're moving directories back and forth, that you have to be very careful about the backslashes or the slashes at the end of the directory. That tells the system where it's going to put stuff. Are you copying everything out of this directory into this other directory? Do you want to copy the entire directory? It all depends on syntax, so watch that close, and you can look up examples for see how that works.
But we'll say copy this file. And we don't need an extension because this is Linux. And so we should have this in there. So you can see we have this in there at 0 bytes. And so I'll go ahead and clear this. Okay, so what we're going to do here is I'm going to copy this file to the CentOS, well, the one I keep connected to, my CentOS dev. And it will obviously vary for yours. So let's go ahead and I'll copy this, and then we'll edit this together. So you can see me edit this, and we'll do a dry run. We'll issue the end this time because we want to make sure that we do it right. I'll just forget the mouse because it's a little wonky. So we're going to go copy this file because the source is copy. This file is what we want to copy. We're going to connect to CentOS dev. Make sure I get that. Well, so hitting enter, hit the delete key, off one. So then we're going to enter 10.0.0. And remember, folks, this is for my setup right now. This is not, don't just take that and automatically go, oh, okay, well, I'll just use, this. So on this machine, I think I'll just put it in, I'm going to show how you can make sure you get the paths right. So I'm just going to do CentOS.dev, and we'll say backups. So let's go create that real quick because I want to throw this in the backups command. So, or backups directory, excuse me. So let me go SSH into that device. I wasn't sure if we were going to show this or not, so I did not auto set that up. Let it connect, okay. And as you can see here, we don't have that, so let's make a backups directory, and then I'll ls the backups directory so you can see nothing's in there. There's nothing in there. Okay, clear that. So now we have our backups directory created, and I'm going to go ahead and issue this with the end so we can see and make sure. I always like to just put a backslash just to make sure, and I always try and keep mine where I'm putting it with the backslash. So let's run this with the end command and see what happens. So didn't denote anything was deleted. So I think we're okay. Would you concur, Joe?
Yeah, it looks good.
Looks good to me. So I'm just going to hit the backspace up, and I'll just hit the delete or get rid of the end, excuse me, so we can really do this. Okay. So I believe it should have completed successfully. We didn't get like unable to do it. So let's go ahead and connect again.
You didn't do it. You didn't give it the V for verbose.
Yeah, we forgot to do that. We didn't mention that. There's V for verbose. Let's go ahead and reissue that.
Yeah, and then you can
do that again for people.
Yeah, put the V in there.
We talked about that, Joe and I did, and then we didn't. Okay, so sending incremental list, so you can see there. In fact, here, hold on. Let me do another one because I kind of messed that up. So here, let's just copy this to copy this file to. How about that? Okay, because yeah, you're right. We forgot the V, or neither one of us caught that. So okay, we're going to do the test. We've added the V to be verbose. Oh, well, I'm still not. I didn't put the. Let's do copy to, because we don't have that on there. I want to show you when it adds something. So you can see here, sending incremental list, and it's going to add this, copy this file to. And
that's a new file it's going to add.
Yep, it's a new file it's going to add. You can see, go ahead.
And if it was going to delete, above that, you would see deleting. So it tells you exactly what data it's going to modify on the other end if there's stuff already there.
And you can see here, it's a dry run right here. Well, again, yeah, like I said, I apologize for it's a dry run. So let's go ahead and do this. So I'll go ahead and clear this screen, go up, and I'll get rid of the end so we can commit this action. And we will get rid of it. Well, I'll leave the V on. Why not? For it to be verbose. And you can send here. The V is for verbose, gives you this list as you saw before. I ran it without it, which isn't a bad thing in a way. It shows you which. So I'll clear this and let's connect and see if our files are there. And they'll be there, but let's confirm that, shall we? So we know we need to go to our backups directory, and then we'll have two files. Because remember, I ran it once without verbose on, and then I ran it a second time with verbose on. And you can see here we have our two files. And they're both empty because we actually didn't copy any data. But let's say we change something. I'll show one last time. I'll show changing. So these are empty. You can see here 0, 0. So let's show it doing an update real quick. So I'll clear this. I'll then go into, let's see, we should have, yep. So let me, the wonderful VI, I know what some of you are thinking. Let's see, updated. Okay.
Yep.
Then close this, and I'll make sure and show you on this system. So you see we have it's been updated. So, or if I ls this real quick, you can see here that this one is now 9 bytes instead of 00. So go ahead and clear. I'll go back up to our command here instead of copying all that in. And we need to change this back to just the first file name. And well, here I'll show you this time. I'll show you the end so you can see what happens when it's going to update. You can see here it's going to send copy this file because it has changed. So let's go ahead and run this again in a dry run. So let's get rid of the verbose on. Otherwise, it just returns you the command prompt. But I'll get rid of the end to actually execute that command. Okay, so good. It said it sent it, as you can see here. Now, if you had 10 files, you're copying a whole directory, or 100 files or directories, obviously you would see that. We're only doing a single file. So now let's connect back to our user name. And we'll go into our backups directory. And if I ls all this so we can get the size, you can see here we have 9.
Exactly.
00.
So it updated the file.
And you see it's updated. So that's literally how simple it is to rsync. But if you get it wrong, it will happily delete data. So be very careful.
And if you're not comfortable with typing all that at the command line, you can still take advantage of rsync on Linux machines, because it's not just for sending files over a network. You can also use rsync to create local backups, and I've done videos about that. And then there's a front end of that. It's called grsync, and you can look at my videos on that. And I go way into detail about rsync, so you can learn more. It's absolutely one of the most powerful tools for moving data around on a network or even on a local computer that there is.
Exactly. It'll make a complete copy. And by the way, if you have, let's say you have a 300 meg file, an image, and you just change it and there's only 120 bytes get changed, it will only transfer the 120 bytes that got changed. It doesn't have to transfer the whole 300 meg file again. It only has to transfer what is changed. And the same as if you change permissions, it'll just transfer the permissions instead of having to transfer the whole file. It just basically transfers the metadata is what it does.
And that is amazing.
So if you have like a 10 gig backup and you're backing it up, and then that, say you back it up every week and you only had, say, 5.5 megs of change, it will just back those up. But like I said, unlike a lot of backup schemes, it doesn't have to transmit the whole file unless it's obviously new or something has been deleted on the other side and it's no longer there. It will have to do that. But yes, and that's the advantage. When you see us connecting with SSHFS, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, I could just use Rsync and just omit that, because Rsync's really easy. It's Rsync flags space. Where do you want to copy from? Where do you want to copy to? So you can. It's just that's it. So if you look at here, let me exit out of this. Let me clear this. If you look at Rsync, you can see here we have the Rsync command, our flags. Oh, great. This mouse doesn't, like I said, we have our flags. Then we have what do we want to copy, basically, and then where are we putting it? And so that's it. So in this case, we're saying copy this because the source. Where are we putting it? And we could reverse this if we wanted to copy from. If we reverse this and we said, put the copy of this file on this side, and we had CentOS at blah, 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 it would then go connect to the CentOS dev and copy the file to this computer instead. So that's the advantage of that. We could say copy this, and if I entered in like this, if I did copy file, and then we'll move on, copy this file, and then I went up here and put this in. Oh, great, I just blew it away. Well, anyway, you get the point. So if now we have our or our source file, because our source file in this case is connect to CentOS.dev, and then where do I want to put this? And so then I would just simply say I could put this, we're in the temp folder, so I could just tell it to put it here. But personally, I don't like that. I like working with full paths because then I know it's going to the right place. So I could say just put this in the home/developer/temp. And then honestly, folks, when I'm working with Rsync, I don't use relative paths because it's so dangerous, even on servers and stuff. I just put in the full path because I know I'm off one server. I meant to put it one up. I just personally put in full paths because I know it's going to go in. And since Rsync will blow away all your data or copy over data you didn't mean to, I personally always use full paths, but that's me.
And that's about all we need to talk about Rsync, I think, here, because that's a good introduction. There's a lot of great information on the web about Rsync. You could just do a search, read the man page, and lots of people have ways to use it because it is so powerful and it is so important when you're working with servers. And it's like I said, you could move one file or you can move gigs and gigs and gigs of data with Rsync.
Okay, so that's that one. So now we're going to get into SSHFS, and unless you had anything else to add, Joe.
The only thing that I wanted to throw in there is that there's another tool that you can use with SSH, and that is SFTP, and you could do it at a terminal. So if you're old school like I am, and if you like, you're used to using FTP servers, and I am, you can use the same FTP commands that you're used to from the FTP client, and you can use that with SFTP, and then you can get into the remote host, and you can do all kinds of groovy things like search through the file system, get, put. You can then change your local directory on the machine that you're on. So if you're used to working with those kind of tools, I end up using SFTP a lot because then it's like, I just need one file. Okay, well, I'm going to go over here and get it. And for me, it's just quicker. But Jeremy's going to show you SSHFS, which is just another way of doing this. And SSHFS is way more flexible than SFTP, but it still has its place. So if you're used to working with FTP servers, check out SFTP if it's not something you're already using.
Yeah, I used to use that, but then I've since moved on. So I put it up there, by the way, if you're paying attention and watching the video. I understand a lot of our listeners will go off and do other things. So, but on the screen, I just did a man on SFTP.
Yeah, on this video, usually when we do these long videos, it's like there's not stuff on the screen. This one actually has stuff on the screen. So anyway, go on.
Yeah, once we get to connect to SSH, you're gonna really be amazed at what it does for you. Okay, let's clear this.
So at this point in time, we have pretty much showed you a lot of the different tools you can use with SSH. We've talked about them. We've talked about X forwarding. We've talked about all that stuff. Now, all this stuff is great, but you'll notice that you had to remember a lot of things. You got to remember where you're going, what you're doing. So Jeremy sat down and came up with this tool that we're going to introduce to you now that automates most of this.
In a moment. First, we're going to just talk about the underlying SSHFS command and show you how you can issue it yourself.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, but let's do SSHFS.
Yeah. Then we'll get into the tool and where the tool actually handles all the heavy lifting for you. But first, I want to show you how SSHFS works so you understand. Now, I've already installed it on this computer because even though it doesn't require reboot, I don't know. I think it's better to have it on there. However, if you're on, this is in pretty much every repo, and I'm, like I said, pretty sure Mac works with it. So for Debian, it would be, or Debian-based systems, it would be sudo app or apt-get space install space SSHFS for file system, file share, file system really. So again, that's sudo space apt-get space install, then SSHFS, and that will install it. And again, it doesn't prompt you, but because it's basically loading a Fuse module and everything, I still think it's better to reboot the system. And obviously, if I were to show you that, I would need to reboot the system, and that would kill the connection. So not going to happen. So this command here is what you would issue if you were on Yum, then on a Yum-based system, or DNF if you're on Fedora or some of the new Red Hat stuff. You would need to issue obviously Yum or Arch or whatever. Just look up for your distro of choice how to install the SSHFS package. This little guy right here, and that should pull in everything you need to install. Well, once again, the little squirrely mouse here, if it would cooperate, that's the package you need to install. So again, that's very simple. It should just be one thing. It doesn't have a whole, it doesn't ask you to install 50. Well, I think there may be one or two dependencies, but it's not one of those very large downloads. So, and I do apologize. As I said, I would like to show you, but again, I'd have to reboot the system. So,
right.
Okay. So the command is really simple. It's very, very easy to do. It's similar actually to the rsync command, only SSHFS won't delete anything because you're making a connection. It's a lot like mounting something. So what you're going to issue here, and I'm going to actually do this, but I'm going to first talk about it before we actually issue it. You'll see here we have SSHFS for the command. So remember, instead of SSH, we're now putting in FS after it. And then you're going to be the username, so in our case, CentOS dev for this video, @ and then the host name, and IP for me, colon, then the full path to which you want to connect to on the remote machine. So it's like, look, once you connect to this user, go to X directory, and then space, and then your local mount point for your machine. So let's actually do this. Let's take this and get this working here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and you may be looking down the lines below and saying, oh, well, actually I have one here I can just edit because I was doing some video work earlier and had different. And once again, the mouse here is not cooperating with me. Okay, so we're going to do SSHFS, then CentOS dev, and we have our 10.0.0.45. I'm going to connect to the CentOS dev directory because let's just load that. It's the home directory, and we're going to load this into my user home/developer/the mount point and CentOS dev. However, I'm not sure this exists. Actually, I know it doesn't. I made sure it doesn't because I want to show you.
We didn't create it. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to show you this because if you're new to mounting, you need to know how to mount this. So you have to make sure your mount point is correct. You can specify wherever you want to mount things. You could mount it in opt if you wanted the opt folder, but you have to make sure you have permissions to do that. However, I generally recommend you mount something inside your home directory. You know you're going to have permissions to edit it. So let me go ahead here, and I've chosen to put this in the MNT, or short for mount directory. But again, you could put it anywhere that doesn't already have data in it because it would not like that. So if we go into the mount point and I do an ls, oh, we don't have that. Okay, so we need to go ahead and create this. So all I need to do is create my mount point, which is just a folder in this case. So now if I ls this, well, I don't need to. You'll see we have our mount point. So I'm going to ls this here just to show there's nothing hidden. So there's nothing in there. So we're going to clear that. And now I'm going to go copy this command. Once again, I know I keep saying it, but if my mouse wants to behave itself.
One directory that's always available in most Linux distributions that have desktops installed is one called public. And
yes, you could.
And most people don't put anything in it. So if you don't want to go through all the crap of creating one, you just want to mount something up real quick. Public is a good place to stick stuff because then it's always there and it's usually empty. So if you don't put anything in your public directory already, you're not using that as a shared folder for like Samba or something, then that's a good place to stick it. You don't have to create a folder. You could just do it there temporarily.
So once again, we're going to issue SSHFS. We have our user here, CentOS dev at, our connection, our IP, and then we're saying go to the home folder and then full path, and then we're going to say connect to my path here, which is my home user, and then the mount and CentOS.dev. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And we did not get any errors. So that probably means it worked successfully. Let's ls this. And how about that? We have data now. You can see here we have our backups that we just did with Rsync, our directory. We have our current worker folder. We have our bash directory. So we're literally, it's as if it's local. And let me show you this. Well, great. I clicked on the wrong thing. But if we, let's see, go to system resources, Kaja, however you want to pronounce it. And if I go here to mount, you see here we have CentOS.dev. I can issue this. And if I want to, I can work with this. In fact, if I wanted to split screen this, I can go copy direct. I can copy, for example, let's go to documents. I could do whatever I wanted to do in here.
And most file managers will start an SSHFS session from the file manager. You just click connect to server. You put the same in.
Now, that's this. Yeah, that is. But sometimes the SSHFS gets a little wonky. So I found that yes, you can actually, there is a connection in a lot of folders. You can go to networks and so forth. But I'll show you how you can do that in a moment. So you should see here, I actually moved while Joe was talking from my developer / there's a home here. I'm not showing the home, but developer downloads. I just dragged this over in a GUI fashion to CentOS dev on the remote system. So let's check and see that. You notice we don't see that here. So let me do another ls. And let's see. Oh, I'm not in that directory. I'm sorry. I wanted to keep them here. Well, and stuff correctly. I wanted to keep them on the same screen. But here you see we don't have any Easy Linux. So let me clear it, and I'll then do an ls on this. And now you see here we have our Easy Linux document. So as you can see here, I then use a file manager to copy. So I can sit here and just copy things back and forth and that kind of thing and work with it. And it can be mounted all day long, and I can just sit here and work with it. It's like it's a local system, and I can issue CPs on it. I can issue ls. I can sit here and just do it. I can do another make dir, make new dir. And if we ls this, you'll see then we have a make dir down at the bottom. I'll clear this and bring this back to the top. And let me show you something actually. You might be saying, oh, Jeremy, look at this. This is kind of crazy. 10 users. This isn't your developer. Why are you? That's because I chose not to map this to my user. I chose not to map this to my developer account. There's actually a flag in the SSHFS command that you can put. It's -o, and then you can make it be like it's IMAP equals user, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. I personally don't care. I can edit this. I can come here and I can do everything I want to do. And so I personally just let it see the remote users and what it's assigned to on the remote system. But if you're someone who's a stickler and you have some type of, kind of OCD type thing where you're like, I don't like this, it's not mapping as my user, you can actually tell the system to put your username, and it's not really doing it on the remote system. It's just making it pretty for you. Again, I don't care. So I can do everything I need to do. I have full write permissions on this. So you have to be careful where you mount stuff, though, because if you were to sudo mount this, you would probably not have write permissions because it would mount it as root, not as your user.
Right. So then it's not you, and you can't get into it. So
you might be able to ls it, but you won't be able to copy from it.
Right. And if you're doing this, you're definitely going to be wanting to move data. So it's like.
And this works the same. I can CP stuff in here just as, if I want. I can. It's just as if it's another folder on my system. Now, be careful though, because when it's mounted, if you do say you can issue, like if you issue Rsync against this to another system, it might come in here and start deleting data. So it is now attached to your system. If for some reason a virus got in here and started encrypting data, it could start encrypting that because it's mounted as a system, as another directory. So that is one kind of caveat that you have to be careful when you mount anything. It's like a USB stick. When you mount it, even though it's on the USB stick instead of the local hard drive, you can still, do things to it. So if you're not paying attention, I'm sitting here and I'm not paying attention. I go into CentOS and I think I'm in another directory. Well, I keep not typing this in all the way. And then I'm saying, well, you know what? I need to remove everything from the directory. And you're like, oh, and so you do that. If I were to issue that command, it would start deleting stuff. And you're like, oh, I was in the attached NAS. I wasn't in.
Yeah, you're doing that on the other system. You're not doing it on your local machine.
So just be really careful. When it's attached, it's great. It's wonderful, and you can work with it, but you want to be careful that you're in the right direction. I mean, that goes even on your local system, but just remember the system's now attached. So just be careful there. So you might wonder now well, let me look at my notes here so that I'm not getting ahead of myself. So that's literally all you do. And then you have here, if you look up here, I'll try and highlight this part if my mouse wants to, okay, it's not, forget it, I'll just use the keyboard. I'll highlight this part here. To add a key, you can simply use the -O, as you can see here, -O identity file equals, and then the path to your key. So if you have to connect with the key, and then you just repeat the same here as you would as below, because it's still the connection, the directory to mount, and then the where you want to put it on your file system. I use it all the time now to connect to servers. I mean, this is great. I think this is really, really awesome. Now, my tool will do all this in the background. You don't have to remember any of this stuff once you set it up. It just handles all this for you. So that's the nice thing. So let's talk about how you disconnect. You can already see that. It's fuser mount space -U and then the local mount point. So let's go issue that. Now, let me show you something. If I issue this fuser mount and I do -U, and then I try and unmount this. I have to enter the full path this way. I try and unmount this. Has failed. That's because I'm in the directory, and you can't unmount something it's in use.
Yeah,
so
it's busy. There's a process that's hooked up to that at this moment. So the system says, no, wait a minute, somebody's using this thing. I'm not going to let you unmount it.
So I wanted to show you that in case you're using that and you're like, why can't I? What do you mean it's busy? So if you do that and you're like, oh yeah, I had a text document open, look around your system. If it's a share that say you're in a home environment, you got 3 or 4 people using it, it's possible you might not be using it, but someone else might be using it. And if they're connected to your machine, not if they're on their machine connected to it, but you just have to be mindful of that. So I wanted to show you that you can't unmount something you're currently using or files are using. So now that I'm out of that, well, here, let me show you that I'm out of it. So I'm out of it, and it's just one directory down. I can just simply issue fuser mount space -U and then enter my directory. Oh, here, let me first show you that I can still get it. So we still can get data. So now let me issue my fuser mount -U, and then we're going to issue in this case, you can always use a full path, but I'm going to just use the relative just because it's one directory down from where I am. I got no errors, so it should have worked. So I'll just issue the ls again. You can see now here, whereas above we had files and directories, now we have nothing. And if you try and unmount something that's not mounted, you'll see, watch what happens, because it's already unmounted. Boom, it's not mounted. It's telling us fuser mount saying, hey, there's no entry. This system isn't mounted. So if you see that, then you know, oh, it was not mounted. So that's how easy it is to unmount a SSHFS directory. Now, one thing I do want to let you know, and you probably are going to want to edit this. In the SSH configuration for a lot of Linuxes and Unixes, often the server alive interval is not set so to keep your session open. So if you mount an SSHFS session, or an SSH session for that matter, and you walk away for say 2 hours and you come back, more than likely your connection is going to be disconnected.
It won't even be disconnected. That terminal will freeze. You can't do anything with it.
Yeah. Look what happened here. I was connected to this in Kaja, and you see here it just threw me back to the computer because we were connected there, and it's like, oh, unmounted, nowhere access. So you don't want that, more than likely. Like if you're trying to set this up to say, look, I want a network share so I can just store files here on my NAS or something, and I don't want to be constantly thrown out every few minutes or whatever, you are going to have to do a little bit of editing here. It's not too bad, so just bear with me here. So let's go back to the notes and look. What you're going to have to do is, in most Unix situations, including like FreeBSD and on Linuxes and so forth, this file we need to edit is going to be in the etc ssd ssh_config. So we're going to need to edit that, and then we're going to have to add or modify. We want to add or modify. We can look for this, but we want to add the server alive interval so that every 2 minutes, our SSH client will make sure to say, I'm still here. Don't close. It's like a keep alive in essence. It's like, hey, don't close the connection. I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still here. So I don't think you need to set it to like 5 seconds or something. I think that's a little bit too much, but you definitely want to set that. So let's go ahead and do that. And you will have to be sudo, get sudo access to do this. And let's see if my mouse is going to cooperate, or no, forget it. I'll just use I'll just highlight it on it. I know I could jump to the end, but we'll just do it this way. So again, I'm going to use VI. I know, hated VI. I know, whatever. So I go back to the late 90s doing this stuff, and VI was where it was at. No, all that. Anyway, so I'm going to paste this, and it's a little bit bigger. I know my notes aren't as big. I don't have the text turned up really high, probably. But so it's sudo space your editor of choice, text editor of choice. Mine's VI, so nano, whatever. And then it's /etc/ssh/ssh_config because we're going to edit our client. So I'm going to go ahead here. We're going to have to issue password for your user, so in sudo. Now, when you do this, it should do it for the whole system because we're not editing this just for your user. Now, you could. There's actually in the config file, you can go do this. But I say edit at the system because if you're using this, like say in Joe's environment, and if he logs out and his kids were to come and log onto the same system and use it, you want to mount shares. You don't want to have to go put in special commands in the local file. You want to just have the system just keep doing this. So if you ever create any other account. So while you can definitely use that config file I showed you earlier where we put in the host file, I would say just go ahead and I have added this here. I say go ahead and put this in at the actual system level myself. So you can see here I already added this because, again, I had set up a fresh VM, and anyway, we had audio issues. So this one's already set up, but basically I'll go ahead and delete it. If it wasn't here, you would simply do insert, and I'll show it to you again. What you need to add or edit is server alive interval and set it for how many seconds you want it to basically ping and say, still here. There we go, the mouse again, whatever. So it's server alive interval. And you can see here S, A, and I are all caps. So we'll go ahead and go into insert mode. Oh, why it wasn't insert mode. That's what we get for paying attention. Okay, so now we just do server alive interval and go ahead and X out of, well, for me, because I'm using VI, hit escape, then :X, so it will close and save. And then you have made the change, but you haven't made it live. It's not picked it up. You have to reboot the whole system, or, and I'm not going to do this because I don't want to, you would simply issue sudo system control. Again, as Joe was pointing out, we are giving commands for systemd based. So if you're not, you'd have to do service-based commands. But you do sudo system control space restart SSH, and it would restart the SSH, not the server, but your client, and it would pick up that change. So then you don't have to be concerned. It will just every 120 seconds, your machine will go, I'm still here, server. Even if it's not a real server, it might be in a, I'm still here. Don't close out on me. I'm still here, or whatever you set here, 180 seconds or whatever. So you do need to make that little change because otherwise what's going to happen is you could be going back and forth and you're like, wait, why can't I copy in there? And you'll be saying, what? I can't copy? Where are all my files? And at first it might throw you off and you might suddenly get concerned. I just deleted everything. It's like, no, you just got disconnected. So
exactly. And it won't do that. It won't do that if something is actually transferring. I mean, you can have this thing set up transferring for 3 hours. It's just when it's idle. So if it's idle for a particular point of time, and it does depend on the server. Some of them are set for like 30 seconds. Oh, it didn't do nothing in 30 seconds. Boom, freeze up.
Exactly. And you could set that. You could actually go, if you're in control of this, you could go on the other end and say, never throw anything out. But
right.
You just, if you never know where you're going to connect, so it's just better just to make it's your actual client. Now, like I said, when I was showing, you can actually, I'm not going to go into it, all of this, but as I showed you, if you look here in the config file, you can actually issue all kinds of configurations, and you could put a server alive and put commands in here as well. However, again, if you do that for you and then you create another user in your family or something, and then you're like, that user keeps getting thrown out, and they're like, well, why? It's like time, and you're going to forget because it's like, well, it's working fine on my account. You're going to be sitting there scratching your head. You're like, why doesn't? I just say make it system-wide because that's something that's pretty critical, I think, and then just be done with it. But you could come into your .ssh config thing, and that picks up changes, and then that will just, any connection, if I were to copy the server alive, it's supposed to anyway, if it's configured that to read that file, and most SSH clients are, to just pick up that change. So I'm not going to save any changes on that. So anyway, just letting you know if it's something you're like, I don't want to do it server system-wide. Well, there you go. So we're almost done with this, and then we'll get to connect to SSH. Okay. So let's see here. We are the only other thing we have is hooking this up to the system. Because again, let's say you have a server, you have an extra tower or something, you put some Western Digital black drives in it or green drives or whatever you can afford, have laying around, and you're like, okay, there's a family of 4 of us here. We want to get all our files over there. That's just where we want to store it. I'm just going to store all our data over there, most of our data anyway, and then, but we want to connect to it. So I'm not going to, this is a real pain. If you look at this Arch wiki here, and we'll put some data on, I'll actually create a notes for this section on my website or something like that and so you can see these. But if you go to this Arch wiki URL here, you can actually see and read about this, because you're supposed to be able to put an FS tab and edit FS tab and put this long stuff on here.
It doesn't work.
Yes, and see this, by the way, remember that map thing I was telling you about? You can include the -O and then see the identity file here is above. You can see here default permissions, and you can even match the UID and GID so you get your user things. That's what I was talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. This does not work. Honestly, folks, I have tried. I have rebooted. I get errors. The thing doesn't like that. And as Joe points out, because it has to start a Fuse module, as you can see here, fuse.sshfs, and it seems to be trying to like load this before the module's loaded, so you get all kinds of wonky errors and everything. I'm like, no, I think that's too complicated. But it's there if you want to go bang your head against the wall and try and get it to work. And if you get it to work, awesome. I never could get it to work, honestly.
Never worked for me either.
So forget it. There's an easier or simpler way to do this. So let's say we want to connect to that CentOS thing. So let's go back up here.
When the machine boots.
Yes, when the machine boots. So we're gonna connect here. Hold on. I just want to show. I'm gonna do it manually real quick so we can see, and then I want to show you what I'm talking about. So I'm gonna issue. Well, hold on. Let me get out of this. Go up a directory, and then, well, I don't know why I did it that way. I just could have got whatever. Okay, so you can see here we don't have anything in here. Okay, so let's go ahead and clear that. I know I did that real fast. I just really wanted to show you there's nothing in there. That's really most of the point. So if I click here and I log into this, okay, now if I issue that directory, I can look. Oh, yay, great. Okay, so there's files here. So that's what I'm talking about. We want this to auto mount every time. Well, this is the command we're issuing, right? So all we have to do is basically just have the system keep issuing this command. And if you have an identity file, I showed you the -identity file one above. All we have to do then for this to work is, now I'm going to show you on Mate, which can slightly vary from GUI to GUI based systems. But on Mate, I can go here to menu, and I'll just go to all, so I don't have to go find the specifics, because honestly, I always forget where that is. See, we have startup applications. I think it's in administration. I always forget if it's administration or preferences. Anyway, we have startup applications. I can click here, and look, I can do add. I can simply add this, and I can enter the command I want it to run, which is that command. And then I could say, mount, NAS or something, whatever you want to put in here. And then if I go ahead, or well, that can be the name. And then if I want, I can add a comment. I don't care, because we're not going to, I'll get rid of this after it. And then if I scroll, well, I went past the M's there, but if I go to the M's here, you'll see mount NAS. And if I edit this, you can see here, it's going to run this command. So when the system boots up, it should run this command and just mount that. It'll have that mount point, and then it will be ready for me to use it. How easy is that? So much easier than messing with FS tab. Go ahead.
Exactly. And if you are using Samba, if in other words, you're going to use the Samba share, and you want a constant share up all the time. It's just, all you do is change the command. It's SMB. It's an SMB mount, and it's the same thing. And then if you are in a situation where you're going to mount up several shares, probably the best thing to do at that point would be to write a script and then call the script up in startup. Because
that's exactly what I was going to mention next. Is you might want to do a bash script.
Yeah, Jeremy will show us how to do that next.
So if you wanted to have several, and see the advantage of this, if I put this in the FS tab, the danger is other users could mount that, because when it boots up, it's going to be trying to figure things out and trying to go out. So if you don't do that exactly right, then it could be trying to mount it to other users. Whereas if I put this in my startup, like here, I know it's not going to mount other users, because you have different wallpapers and stuff. So I just know it's a lot easier. And I don't have to risk, if you're a new Linux user, messing with FS tab, and then all of a sudden your system won't boot because you changed one line above when you didn't mean to, and you didn't catch yourself doing that. And now I can't find your home directory, or can't even find the general mount point, and your system's going, what? So this is a much safer option.
Absolutely.
So if you want, all you have to do for a bash, I'll just do it in this one. All you got to do is you'd put your bin bash, if I can spell right, you put your bin bash, and maybe you want to comment here, say, we'll go SSHFS mount points. You can put whatever you want in here. And then all you have to do is say list your different mount points. But what I would do is I'd put a sleep command in between, say maybe, well, it's up to you.
Yes.
Maybe sleep 5 or 5-ish or so, because what you want to do is you want to, so here, we'll just, I don't know, we'll just do another one. Well, oh, once again, okay, come on, mouse. So we'll just say that we're connecting to 2. Once again, my mouse is, I don't get why these VMs, but anyway, so, you know, we just say amount 2, and then you could do sleep 5. You could create a loop if you wanted to. If you want to get really crazy, you could create a function call, and not, so you don't have to keep repeating this. But if you want a quick and down and easy script to do, this is literally what you would do. You would just simply have your mount points go in there, or say we'll go another user, and then you could just, and you could go to a different machine even. It doesn't have to be this. You could be going to.
Right. And the thing is that those sleep things, if you're going to be doing multiple mount points, it's important, because if you do all of them together, it may only do one and the next 2 will fail. That's because there's a little process that goes on. It's got to go out, it's got to start the module, and it's got to go out, find the other machine, check that out. Okay, it's got to shake hands. So you want to give it time to do that. So you might have to experiment with those times between the mount points there, but this is absolutely the most reliable way to do it.
Yeah, and so then if I were, say, to save this as mounts.sh in my home directory or something, then I would just go up to, again, this is using the mate or mate manager, and they're all going to be pretty similar, by the way, but you know, this is just the way this would work. So then I'd come here to, yeah, they all work the same. And so wait, I kind of got, okay, so when you go to S's, sorry, I started to get a little bit, when you start speaking, sometimes you lose your spot. So we go to startup apps here, and then I'd go down. No, don't see. There's the mouse again. I tell you. Anyway, so I would go to mount points here, and then say if I had, instead of this command, I would get rid of all this, and then I could say, let's say I like to do the full path just to make sure. You could go say developer / and then let's say you had mount points.sh, because that's what it pointed to. So you would need to save this script. If I was going to do that, I'd have to save that script into my home directory, just my home directory, and make sure it's executable. So make sure the execution bit is set, either the cmod it to, well, here, I'll just show you. So, you know, this is a showing video. So if you're going to do this, you'd have to make sure, if I go to properties here, I'm right-clicking, going to properties, you'd have to make sure your permissions is set to allow it to execute. So when it boots up, or from the command line, you'd have to do chmod plus is one way, or you could 755 it in the file name mount points. I mean, we're not in the right directory, but that's really, because see, the thing is, we're going to get into Connect2SSH now, and it makes it a lot easier, and a lot of this a lot easier too. And you could even call that command if you wanted to.
So now what we've done for this entire video is that you guys have seen all of the manual ways to do this, and what Connect2SSH does is it pretty much automates all of this. So once you get it set up and get all your information in it, boom, not a big deal. Take it away, Jeremy. Wow us with Connect2SSH.
Okay, I did realize one thing we forgot to mention. We keep teasing it, and then I promise it will be, is we forgot to mention that if you don't know the IPs of your machines, you can issue a command called ARP-scan, and I did that here, and I did forget that, and so I probably should.
Well, very quickly here, let me explain. If your router, whichever one that is you're hooked into, has DNS on it, where it will actually resolve host names, you don't need to use IPs with SSH. You could put in SSH into the name of the machine, and it'll find it for you. But some routers don't, and if yours doesn't, then you'll have to figure out where the IP addresses are, and there's a tool in there called ARP-scan that will allow you to do that. And then you might want to go and look at setting up the static IPs to make that stuff go away. There's all kinds of ways around that, but I just wanted to make sure that that got mentioned. We don't have to explain it, but this is what you get. Yeah, this is what you get.
Here's what you get. Now, I just did it on one of my subnets, and I took out the IPs because those. If
you double click that, it'll full screen that.
Yeah, double click that. I could just. I know I could just full screen. I was trying not to, but okay, we'll just full screen. I've done that on many videos or files, but yeah.
Yeah, so
it's kind of fuzzy.
This is the output of.
But this is the output, and so you would do sudo space ARP and then -scan. You have to have the package installed. So if you run this and it goes, don't know the command, you would just type in for your Ubuntu-based system sudo apt-get install and then ARP -scan, and you'd enter in the L-L, And then what it's going to do is it's going to go out and scan your subnet, and it will give you a list of IPs. It'll give you a list of MAC addresses. And then if the machine is broadcasting some type of ID, it will show the ID. So I did this on one of my subnets, and this is what it came out with. So that's just if you're looking
where it is saying unknown over there. That's how you're going to know. That's how you're going to know whether your DNS is actually working on your local. We're not talking about DNS on the internet. We're talking about DNS on your local subnet, where it will actually resolve host names of local machines that are on. And if it's not working, you don't have it turned on, or that doesn't exist in your particular router. And a lot of cheap home routers that you get from your ISP don't do that. I've got one right now that doesn't do that. So that's what that will show you. If you see unknown, that means it's not figuring out the host names.
That's right, and that's very common. So it's really up to you. And really, if you're in a home network or even a business network, you probably don't care about domain or even having a host name as much as you want static IPs. Not necessarily static IPs for the internet, but local static. So you know that, say, Joe's computer is always going to be 192.168.1.1, or, well, that's usually a gateway, but 1.50 or whatever. And you know that when Joe reboots tomorrow morning, it's not all of a sudden going to be 192.168.1.28. And then you're saying, I can't find my connection, my mount point. So
yeah, ARP scan will tell you where everything's at.
Okay, so now you've seen the long way of doing things, and I showed you with SecureFS. Just point that out one last time here. I'm not going to save this. So if you have to use an identity file here, you do the -O in the identity file with the key right here. So now let's get into actually connect to SSH and show you all the goodness it does, because you've seen the long way of doing it. And you system admins are really going to love this, because I use it all the time, like daily, almost every once in a blue moon. Okay, so let's go ahead here. And we don't need two of these file managers. I have downloaded the file. Where did God? It went over here from there to there. I don't know why it does that, but anyway. So I have downloaded the Connect to SSH program. And there will be notes on the web page, and we'll give you the URL and everything, where to go get this file. But
we will have a bunch of links in the description for this video that'll take you to the show notes here. That'll also take you to where you get this. And by the time we actually post the video, that will be ready to go, right?
That's right. And we're doing this on Friday, so we'll see when we get this up.
We'll see when we get the page built.
Yeah, might have to launch it on Saturday, honestly. But anyway, so the Connect to SSH program, I have downloaded the program. So you'd follow the directions to download the program, which will be, it'll be on this page right here, which I will discuss at the end. So let me go back here. So we need to.
And the program will be on Git.
Yeah, we'll be on Git as well as you can do downloads. You will be able to do a Git against it as well if you know Git and want to issue a Git. You can also just download it as a zip. I'll probably put the direct link on the page just to go start the zip download, but it will be available on Git. I'll have directions there what the repo is there. Anyway, so we want to run to connect to SSH2. So I'm going to go ahead and run connect to SSH2. Oh no, it didn't work. Oh, why not? Well, that's because we have not installed the program to work. And it's right now sitting in the downloads folder. So if I go to downloads, wait a minute, where am I? First of all, I should be in my home. Yep, okay. So let's go to downloads. And if I look here, we'll see the Connect to SSH program. And I can go ahead here and I can run this command and it will run. Now, there's some dependencies missing. And we'll address that in a minute. That's not the point. The point is we just want to make sure that the program runs. Well, that's fine. But I don't want to have to come here every time just to run to connect to SSH, or I don't want to have to type in, some type of command. No, that's annoying. I just want to be able to type in connect to SSH. And also, if I am not in that directory and I try and do some type of auto completing, I'm hitting tab, it's not working because it's not in the path. So we want to address that and fix that situation. Now, you could edit your path file, which is one thing you can do on a Unix-based system. So I used to do that on Solaris boxes and stuff, edit my path variable so it would point to the downloads, but that's not cool. I don't want to have to do that. Now, in Ubuntu-based systems, it depends on the distro, but in Ubuntu-based systems at least, this thing will run any program, the computer will run any program that is in my user / bin, bin, and that's for binary, not like someone named bin, but bin. So if I look here in developer, I don't see a bin directory, I don't see a bin directory. If I simply create a bin directory, bin, so now I have a bin directory. If I go get that file now, we'll copy this, and I'm going to paste this into the bin directory. And now I go back here, and we'll see here my working path is still my home directory. If I hit, oh, look, it auto-completes. Wow, it runs. So I don't actually have to type in some long path because, again, at least in Ubuntu-based systems, bin is already in that path. So your username / bin. Now, this is how I generally personally run it. But if you're on a system that you want to have multiple people run it, you're in a home environment and there's 3 or 4 people that are using this, and you want them to be able to run it as well, or you're in a server administration setting where maybe you log into a central authentication server and there's 10 admins or 20 admins or 100 admins, you would want to install this, or well, really copy this into a directory that's going to just auto execute for everybody. So something like, I would suggest user local bin. So if we look in user, it's USR for uniform system resource, user local bin, bin again for
resource.
Yeah, I've heard it both ways. And again, that's bin for binary. There's nothing in here. So if I were to copy this, and you have to do a sudo in that, and then you have to work with your permissions, and I'm not going to show that, you would then you could do it that way. Or you could just copy this in everyone's directory. But if you had, say, 20 system admins sharing a central login server, I would just copy it one place.
So generally, just to recap very quickly, if it's a script or a program that you compile yourself, and you're the only person that's going to use it, you can throw it in your home folder in the folder called bin, and you'll have access to it. If you want everybody on the computer to have access to it, regardless of what account they're logged into, then you're going to want to put it into local / bin, and then everybody else will see it.
Yeah, because you can either put it in, like, most commands will be like, if you look in user, and this is going to be a long list, user bin. But I personally think that things you custom install should go, again, as I showed you, into user local bin. It just keeps it neater, and that should still auto execute for you. And that way you'll know later on if you ever want to get rid of it, it wasn't installed by a package, it was installed by you. That's just my advice.
Right. And don't do what I do, because I throw everything into bin, which is not, you're not supposed to do that, but I do it anyway, out of habit. I threw everything, in root bin. You're not supposed to do that. Okay, don't do it.
Yeah, exactly. And so just for real quick sake, here, I'll go ahead and show you doing this from the command line. So we now don't have a bin anymore. So and if I try and run the command, it's not going to autocomplete because it doesn't know. The system's like, I don't know where it has there's no such file there, because it's trying to go to bin actually, and it can't. So then I would simply make the bin directory. So if we look, I don't know why I did the all there. We see we have bin there, and if I go into my downloads directory, we can see it is there. So I can just issue the cp command, the file name, go up 1, put it in bin. And now if I do it, it auto-completes and it runs. So we've installed it from the command line. So I think most users will use the directory, and I kind of flew through that, but I think most people, if they're using Linux on the desktop, they're going to do the GUI method, not so much the command line method. But there you go. If you're connecting to a server, you're a server admin, you probably should know how to do, basic copying and stuff.
Right.
So, okay. So we're out of that, and I can run it anywhere. I could go to opt. I could still complete it. Doesn't matter where in the system I am. Okay, so we've done that part of it. So now though, if I'll go ahead and run this, you'll see, it's not quite executing because the system is telling us, well, wait. The system's going, whoa, okay, I know you want to run me, but I'm missing a few pieces of information. There's 4 requirements for the system, 3. One is bash, so you're going to have that. But if you're on a FreeBSD type install, you might not have bash, or if you're using Solaris or something, you may not have bash. So you need to install bash. That's number 1. On Linux is not an issue. Almost every Linux I know comes with bash. Probably a few out there that don't. But any standard Linux can have bash. So that's requirement 1. Requirement 2 is that SSHFS module I showed you, the fuse module. So that's already installed on the system. So it's not showing up. It would if it was not installed. If I removed it, it would say, whoa, that's not here. So we need the other things are SQLite 3, which is the database it uses, and W3M, which is a text-based file, well, web browser basically. So we need to install those. Now, we're on Ubuntu, a Debian-based system, so you can see here the command is given for us, sudo apt get install SQLite 3. I also have provided the instructions for yum install, and if you're on a DNF, like the latest Fedora or something, and then for other distros or other Unixes like a BSD based, you'll have to see your documentation. But the package is this right here, SQLite 3. And then we have another one, but let's go ahead and install this. So I'm just going to copy here this package, and we'll go ahead and paste it. None of this takes very long, so I have to enter in my password for sudo.
These are very tiny utilities.
Yes, they are. They're not very big files at all, and they're very, very small. And SQLite, for example, is used on a lot of different devices.
Yeah, a lot of people. Some people out there might be seeing that and go, "Wait a minute, do I have to install an entire MySQL?" No, this is a very tiny.
And you might have this because you could have installed and it's done. You could have installed a package that already needed it. So there's just possible. See, this will vary depending on your computer because you might have installed software that already needed the SQLite 3 libraries, and they could already be on your system. So I'm going to hit enter again. I've just went up and just ran the Connect2SSH, hit it again, and now we can see here the SQLite dependent, or it's no longer saying, hey, SQLite's missing, but it's still saying W3M is missing. So once again, since I'm on my Ubuntu system, I'm just going to copy and paste. Well, come on, mouse. Copy and paste this command, and I got for an extra space there, but that's fine. And I'll paste this in. So it's sudo apt get install W3M, and you can see here's the yum and DNF, and then you'll have to see if you're using another Linux or Unix system like BSD or something. This is pretty small. You can see just a few other small packages, but again, these are not very big packages. They're well known, well supported. So you can see that it is there, done. So now if I go ahead and I run the command, and if I hit okay, let me back up too. If you're not already familiar with completing, you can issue the tab command, as I've been using, to complete stuff. Now, with Connect2SSH, generally CONN will work because, see, if I just do CO and I hit the double tab twice, tab, it gives us a list. And because it's saying, I don't know what you want me to run. And see, Connect2SSH is there. And same thing, if I do CON, well, hold on. If I just do CON, you can see there's a few other CO. That's why I can't you have to do CONN. That's what I do all the time, CONN tab. And what's nice about that is when I do this in tab, it's already put an extra space there so we can issue our commands for Connect2SSH. So I'll clear this, and let's go ahead and run Connect2SSH. And you can see here we get no more dependencies. Now on here, because again, I was not expecting this to use this virtual machine. I just realized I will show you this. This is good to see anyway. The configuration data, if you ever want to remove it, you remove that file. And we didn't get the installation, so I definitely want you to see this because you're gonna see this when you actually set it up for yourself. And the config data, I noticed it did not install for us. So if you ever want to remove it, you delete that file, and then you come to your .config directory, and you simply delete the Connect2SSH directory, and that will get rid of all your config files. I have now totally uninstalled this from the system or removed it. And of course, you can do that from the command line. The reason I did that is I wanted you to see it after you've installed all the dependencies for the first time. Hit enter, and you can see here now we have the initial install. It is copied. We have success. It's created the config directory exists, and it has created its configuration information because it creates two files. It creates a config file, excuse me, and then it creates the actual database file. And so now it says you didn't enter a valid command, so please enter a valid command. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to clear this and issue it again and issue the help command. And you're going to see a bunch of stuff fly by, and I'll explain this. Okay, the way this system works is it's pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward. It's that you issue SSH, Connect2SSH space command, and the command can be any of these down here. So the way it works is you create server entries, and then you assign accounts to the servers. Now, a few things there. First of all, a server doesn't have to be a server that you think of, like a web server or a database server or something. It can be, and that could definitely be part of it. But a server could be anything you're connecting to SSH. So something you want to connect to. It could be if you have a switch you can manage, or a router you can manage, or a firewall that you're SSHing to, or you have a NAS, or you connect your Android to your network and you want to SSH into your Android tablet. But in this program right now, at least, I'm calling it a server. So it's a server instead of, just, server host.
It's just any SSH server anywhere.
Yes, exactly. So just think of server here as, it doesn't have to be like a big honking server on the internet or something. Okay. Now, server actions. So basically what you have to do here is, you'll see under server actions, you can add a server, update a server, delete a server, and list servers. So that's where you add basically a host, like your NAS or your whatever it is you're going to connect to, your local machine you want to connect to and you want others to connect to. Then, like I said, you update, delete, and list them. Then accounts, you set up add accounts, update accounts, deleted accounts, and list accounts. Now, let me also say this. This system is not actually setting anything up. It's just, this is like a repository for holding all your configurations. So if you add an account, it's not going to add an account on the machine, say on your firewall. You'd have to go to your firewall and add it. This is just adding in to connect to SSH, so it will store the configuration data and you can quickly connect to it.
And you won't have to think too hard about it.
Yes, and the beauty of this is when you start getting in here and you just hit go account number, enter, bam, or go account number FS, and it will just auto mount the file system like that. And that's where the power. So you have to learn the system, you have to set it up, and there is a bit, a little bit of learning here. So let's go ahead and let's add a server. So I'm going to, well, here, I should have probably not thrown that away yet. You can either type in add-server, or the short key is AS, and this adds a new server. So let's go ahead and do that. So now let me clear this, issue the command, we'll issue AS for add server. You can see here now it runs, and it's saying, okay, add a server. So first you have to do is type in a friendly name for the device. So we'll just type in here, we've been working with CentOS, so we'll just put in CentOS, well here, how about this, CentOS. And then once I'm happy with it, I'll hit enter. Then you have to enter an IP or URL, but really it's not like a URL / whatever. It's really more like a domain. So it'd either be a subdomain or domain, something that basically can be resolved from the computer that's going to connect to it. So then I will enter here. I'm just going to enter in my IP that we've been using for the sake of argument. Hit enter. Then you have to enter the port number. 22 is the default SSH port, but sometimes you might see one is 2200 or 21, or sometimes anyway,
people 22. Change that.
That's right. So that's why it's settable, but 22's there by default because that's what most. Then you can type any notes. This is up to you. It's optional. You don't have to enter it in, and you could just say development server, whatever. It's up to you. See, the beauty of this is if you had 10 accounts set up to this web server, for example, and it changes, you can just change it in one place, and then boom, all the IPs are updated everywhere. You don't have to go update each one. It's just going to be updated. So then I hit enter, and now it's going to say, look, okay, I'm going to add the following. And you can see here it says the name, the address, the port. It's giving the notes that we typed up. And then you can either, to save it, you have to type yes, which it defaults to, or no to cancel. Now, if you made an error, let's say like, oh, it's really 248. I just hit I used the number pad, and I hit the best thing to do is you can't go, if you answer no, it's going to dump you back out to the command line, say didn't save anything. The best thing is go ahead, save it, and then go and edit it, and edit the 1 or 2 mistakes you made. So I'm going to go ahead and click yes to save it, and we'll see that we have saved our CentOS. Now, the thing is, you cannot have the same server name. Well, you cannot duplicate the same server name. So I could not come back in here and put another device called CentOS web server in here. I couldn't have 2 servers with the same name, because that makes sense. So I'd have to pick another name. So now let me clear this, and let's run the Connect2SSH help again. And we'll see here, how do we list our servers? Because we want to see our information. Well, we can either use list-servers, or we can do it the lazy way, and that's how I do it personally. And we just go ls for list servers. So let's clear. We'll issue Connect2SSH, and I'm hitting tab after the 2 N's, by the way. And I like that. Like I said, it fills it out and puts an extra space, because if you're typing it, you have to put a space to type your command. So I'm going to go ahead and do ls. And now look, we have our server in here. All right, we have server 1 here, and we have our CentOS web server. It's telling us what at this address and what port it's connecting to. So let's just add one more real quick so we can have 2 to work with, because that kind of makes it really nice. So this time we're going to issue Connect2SSH, and I typed it in. I know sometimes I do. And we'll just do add server just for a little bit of variety. Okay, human friendly name. We'll call it FreeBSD. hit enter. So we'll just, by the way, this is not checking for valid information. It's not trying to connect. So if you enter wrong IPs or whatever, it's not like it's going to go verify this or anything like that. So we'll just hit, let's see, R3BSD box or whatever, and then I hit enter, and then, yeah, this looks good to me. So I'll hit yes, and I'll save that. So, because I looked it over, it looks good. So you can see it says success right here. So I'm going to clear this, and now let's go to connect to SSH. I'll do, this time I'll type in list servers, just a variety, hit enter, and you can see here that, yes, we're listing the servers, and you can see here we have our two servers, a server 1 and a server 2, and it's giving the ID, where they are, the IPs they're on, and what ports they're on. Now notice one thing I want to point out here before we move on. The notes are not being displayed. To keep things smaller and just taking up a whole bunch of room, I don't auto display notes. So if you want to see the notes, you have to rerun this command and you just add space notes. So I'll just quickly do that just so you can see what that looks like. Well, I'll just go up here, and all you have to do is add notes, and you can do it to either one. Doesn't matter if it's ls or list-servers. And ls in this case is list servers, not list storage. And hit enter. And now you see same thing, only we have the notes field right here. That's simple. It's really easy to use. And now, any questions at this point, Joe?
No, I'm good. I'm just letting you roll through it here.
Okay, so let's go to help real quick, and then we'll show you connecting in just a moment. Let's just update a server. So you can see here I went to help because I'm not sure. I'm still familiar. I'm trying. Well, I know, but we're acting as if you're trying to learn this, and of course you will be. So we want to update a server, which is update-server or us, and that will update a saved record. Let's clear that, and let's go ahead here and run connect to SSH and type in us. And now it's going to say, okay, you're going to update a server record. Now, again, this is not changing any data on the server or whatever you want to call it, your firewall, whatever.
This is just the local database game.
This is the local database. So again, this Connect to SSH doesn't create accounts. It doesn't delete accounts. It doesn't modify any of that information. It's just, we're basically using Connect to SSH as a repository to keep all our connections, make it really simple to connect to. So once I hit, okay, that's asking us, do you want to look up the server record by name or ID? I'm just going to go by ID because name has to be exact. I know it's server 1. If you don't know it's server 1, you would have to come up and do a list here, and you would just have to do your connect to SSH list-servers or ls, and you could go, oh yeah, that's right. The CentOS server, we'll update this and put OS, capital O, capital S, and that's server ID 1. So you could rerun that. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and enter 1, and it's saying, okay, we're editing CentOS web server. I'm like, let's put that as capital O, capital S, and it's either CentOS or CentOS. I like saying CentOS because it's just one less whatever syllable, CentOS instead of CentOS. Anyway, so we've added CentOS to capital OS, hit enter, and then you're just going through this. If app don't need to make a change, just hit enter. If the port had changed, I could change that. Other 25 is your mail port. Anyway, so I will just go ahead and accept enter. We'll say, okay, development server, yay, or something like that. Just add some changes there. And you can't hit enter. Your notes are very small notes. So now it's asking, okay, look, you want to confirm the record? That's fine. Or to update it, we need to confirm it, I should say. Excuse me. So what you need to do is type in yes, as it says down here, to save or update, or no to cancel. And it defaults to no to protect your data. You have to actually backspace and type in yes. That way you're sure, that's kind of your confirmation that you want to change it. You do have to type in yes, hit enter, and it says success, it's been updated. So there you go. So now if I clear this, and I want to once again do a connect to SSH, do an ls for list servers, you'll see here we have capital O, capital S. And that's all there is. I'm not going to show you deleting because I think that's self-explanatory. You just go through, you look it up again, and it would just ask you to search by ID. I'm sure you can understand how you issue the delete. But, well, the one thing I will show you real quick is if you want to delete a server record, you would do delete server or DS. And so you just go through and delete that record. You'd look it up by ID or by name, and the name has to be exact right now. So I usually say ID, and then it would ask you to confirm that. But I think you get the point because the meat of it is assigning accounts to it. So let's get into that. So now we need to add an account. So this is, okay, so how do we do that? Well, as you can see here under account actions, we have add-account, or we could do AA, and this adds an account or username. So again, you have to have your username set up. So we've already set it up on our NAS, for example, or whatever. And so now we want to simply add this into the system. So I'm going to clear this, and I'm going to run AA. So we're going to go connect to SSH, AA, hit enter, and now it's going to say, okay, you see the action here is add an account, how to load server record, either ID or name. So we're going to go ahead and choose ID because that's easier. And I know it's ID 1. If it didn't, you'd have to cancel. So let's say I don't remember what this was. So you'd have to cancel. You should connect to SSH, do an LS, and go, oh, okay, yeah, the CentOS server I want to add, that's server ID 1 right here. Well, once again, if I can get them out, okay, server ID 1. So I already know that it's 1. So let's go back up and run AA for add an account. Look up the server record by ID, type in server 1. So it's saying adding account to CentOS web server. And I'm going to go ahead and enter my username. In this case, we'll do the one I've been entering all along, which is CentOS dev for developer. Hit enter. Now it's asking us, do you want to log in with a password or a key? We'll do password, and I'll come back and show you how to change it to a key. And I hit enter. So it prefers keys, by the way, because that's more secure. Optional, it says here, you can specify a remote directory when connecting or connected. So do you want us to put it in? You want to accept whatever the server, wherever we just randomly put us, basically where the server says or whatever, or do you want to connect to an account? So we could go to CentOS, say backups, for example. We'll do that because create our backups folder, remember? So then we can enter a mount point. So this is the local mount point. Remember when I told you here, and I'll use the interface here, the Kaha or Kaja, how you want to pronounce it. The mount point here, remember we had this CentOS dev directory here, which is actually still mounted. And so if we want the mount point to be here, we would just enter this. But I want to show you something. This is for SSHFS. So if you don't want to keep typing in your long username over and over, like /home/developer in my case, you can actually, no, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. You will have to type in the full path here. That's just the best way to put it. So let's enter our mount point. Got ahead of myself with the keys there. So we want to enter, we do want to enter our local mount point. I'm just going to put that in here. So now we don't have to remember that in the future as far as typing in. It's just going to know. Then we have our account notes. So account notes is just whatever you want. We'll say Easy Linux video account. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And now it's going to, just like before, it's going to ask us username, CentOS, password type you can see, the remote directory that we're going to connect to, although I usually prefer a final slash on that, mount point. You can see our mount point. And then if we're happy with everything, we just hit type. Yes is already entered for us. If we're not happy, we hit no, but no cancels everything. So once again, because this is all command line, if you want to make a change, because you made one or two small errors, save it and then go back and edit it. So let's click yes, and you'll see, enter yes, and you'll see success. CentOS dev added to CentOS web server. So that worked really well, obviously, because it took it. So if we had an error, it would tell us, and now we can clear. So let's list accounts. So how do we do that? Well, you're learning the system, you're not sure, you issue connect to SSH help, and we can see here, list accounts. So we can type in list-accounts or LA for short. And you can see here, list save accounts. So let's do that. I'll clear the screen. List connect to SSH. Do LA for list accounts, and then it's going to say, do you want it in text format or HTML format? We'll just do text right now. And you'll see here, it gives us a list by server. It's arranged by server name. So whatever the server name is here. And so obviously C is above F. So that's why this is first. It's saying the CentOS web server has one account, and here it is. And the account ID is 1. And then you have server here, FreeBSD, and there's 0 accounts, and it's denoting no accounts because you haven't added any accounts to it. So now it's in the system. So now how do we connect? So for this, I'll run the help again, connect to SSH space help, and you will see here that how do we connect? Okay, let's see here. Well, we're looking through we scroll up here and we're like, okay, cool. This is our connection information. So connection to account. Well, we can issue connect, CO, or CO. So let's do it. We can either do connect or CO. So let's do that. So we do connect to SSH, and we'll just do CO for short. It says, okay, we have to pick an account to make a connection to. Press any key, press ID, because I'm going to look up the server by ID again. Name's kind of a pain in my opinion, but I do have it there, so I prefer ID. I know it's on server ID 1. I type 1. I type in type in the username. Enter. And now it's saying, which method do you want to do, an SSH connection or an SSHFS connection? So we're just going to say SSH, hit enter. And now it's trying to connect. And there we go, we've been connected. Now, you saw the password, it just auto-logged us in because we have our host set up, and so it didn't ask us for a password. But it would have prompted us for a password if it was set up for that way. And we're logged in. Now I can just do whatever I need to do. You're saying, well, Jeremy, wait a minute. Why didn't it, wait, you're saying that I have to go through all of that IDE1 and look up the server name and look up the username. That's not very good. That's not much better than typing SSH in. So let's clear this and do this in a much simpler way. So you'll get used to, well, here, hold on. I got to exit out of this. You'll get used to this, which accounts you use all the time. So the fastest way to do this is to use the shorthand. So let's do connect to SSH space help. And you will see here, we have this go command. Look at that, shorthand go. And you just issue the count ID. And then if you want to mount SSHFS, excuse me, you just put in FS for file system. So let's do that. Now, I already know that our account's 1, and we only have 1 account, so it looks kind of silly, of course. But if you're not sure, you can do connect to SSH space LA, and this time we'll do it through HTML. And you see the HTML version, and it's giving us, to get out of it, you hit the Q and the Y, and this way you can scroll up and down. That way you won't have a long list just flying by you. If you had hundreds of accounts in here, you have a little bit more control. Now, I know that the account ID is 1 because it says it right there. Or I'll put the flashing cursor on it right there. Now, it's silly because there's only 1 account, but imagine dozens or hundreds of accounts in here. So let's go ahead, and we can just simply, okay, Q and Y, clear this. So all we have to enter is connect to SSH, go 1. Now, we don't have to do anything else. Just connect to SSH, go 1. We hit enter, and there we go. We're logged in. How about that? Now, it's kind of, let me show you one thing by doing exit and clearing the config there, because right now this is, let's see, so this is kind of showing, you're saying, well, it's password based, but it's not. That's because it's for that host using a key. So now let's go connect to SSH, go 1. Well, it's remembering. Unfortunately, it's remembering. But the bottom line is it's seeing the key. But if it's password based, it will prompt you for a password unless you already have set up the keys. So that's how easy it is. So you will get used to this, to just say go 1 or go 28 or go 112. But let's do a file system mount. Remember before we had to type in that long information. Now I'm still logged in because we were showing working with it. So here, we go to the mount point. I'm pretty sure we're still connected because I seem to recall seeing that in the, oh yeah, we are. So what we need to do here is issue fuser mount u. I've already shown this, so I'm not going to talk. I just want to quickly get this done so that we can, okay, we're no longer mounted. Okay. So I'm going to clear this. So now to do the file system mount, all we got to do is issue that one connect. Well, here, let's do this. Do this so we can see this. It's not mounted. We get no files. So now we're going to issue connect to SSH, go 1 space FS. Hit enter. And it's already connected in the background, but I have it programmed for about a 10-second delay just to give it time if you're going out on the internet and, you know, there could be some slowness. So technically it's already connected. You would see that in the GUI, and it will throw you back to the command line. But like I said, it's like about a 10-second delay. So now the connection should be established. So I just go up in LS. Look, it's LS. And notice in this case, because we told it where we wanted to mount it for FS, it took us right to the backup directory. Remember that? Because you're going, well, wait a minute. It's not all of the, we're not seeing the same files we were seeing. That's because, as I said, we mounted it in the backup directory. Right. Backups directory.
Yeah, you told it exactly
because that's
where.
I told it where to go. It took us right to the backups directory because I told it /home/CentOS dev/backups. So that's why we're seeing copy this file and copy this file too. But it went right to where I told it to. You didn't have to. Now, what's easier? What do you think's easier? This and faster. This, or if we look back at our notes and go back up here, something like this right here. So you tell me which is easier, this right here above it or issuing a command like this. So would you rather type this in or would you rather type that in? Well, okay, I can't.
Yeah.
Again, the mouse is being squirrely, but would you rather type this command in right here or would you rather type in this command right here? And again, the mouse right here. So which is faster? And again, if you had, I mean, I have all kinds of accounts. You just get used to, oh, I use 4 a lot. I use 128 a lot. I use 52 a lot. And you might have to go look something up because it might be, well, I only connect to this one like once every 3 months. So I have to go list accounts and say, oh yeah, that's right. That's account. That's, 68 or something, or that's 135 because I don't use that a lot. But look how much faster. And then if we have a key right here, it will auto include a key. So again, I know I've said it a few times. I didn't quite get to use the clean VPS. So there's kind of some things that are remembering. But if it was password based, it should be asking for a password because that's what it's trying to pass a password in there. But we do have some configuration settings. I could go here. Tell you what. Let's go into, I'd like to illustrate that behavior. So let me go into my, and let's just, well, I want to keep those. So I'll tell you what, let's move my machine keys, okay, up one directory. Okay, so they're not in there. So now if I do connect to SSH go 1, should prompt us for a password. There we go. So see, now it's prompting us for a password because I told it for a password. So that's the behavior we should get. Oh, whoops. I can clear it here too. So see, now we're in the box. So here, now let me repeat that. So if I hit go to SSH, so excuse me, connect to SSH, go, then 1. Now you can see because I told it password. But let's say this is actually good because my key is no longer in that directory. So this is good because I'll show you editing this. So let's say we want to add the keys in. So what we can do here is we can go ahead and make that change. So let's go ahead and make that change. So clear, connect to SSH. Now this time we want to edit an account. So I'm doing connect to SSH space and then help because we're trying to learn the system. And we can see here, well, to update an account or edit an account, it's update-account or UA. Okay, so let's issue that. And we know our account's 1, right? Because that's all we have. And it's kind of silly because there's only 1 in here. I know, I understand that. So let's go ahead and issue that. Oh, hold on. We still have our mounted. I didn't show you unmounting, which is good. See how this is still mounted right here? To unmount that, you can issue the F user, or let's look up here. The shorthand is just end account ID or mount point, but it's just easiest to do end account ID. So let's issue that command. Let me clear the screen here. Let me go into the mount point so we can see it. So if I ls, we will see that we have files. So let's end this. So all I have to do is connect to SSH end 1, excuse me, because it's the account number is 1. I hit enter. Look at that. It already knows because we told it that that's where the mount point was. I didn't have to go remember exactly. I didn't have to type in F user mount. I just had to remember the account ID. So now if I just go up and ls this, we don't have it mounted anymore. It's now unmounted. So that's really easy. I mean, you'll just go back and forth. I do it all the time. I'm like, go, blah. I'm not going to mention the numbers I use all the time, but I have certain numbers I mention. Not that it does you any good, but I just know the numbers that I use all the time. And I'm just like, boom, go like that, go. And then I type in, say, 34, enter, done. Or I need to mount the file system, bam, like that, enter. And I'll have all the stuff's mounted exactly where I want it to because I've set it up. So, but let me show you using the key information. So first of all, it's set up to hopefully, and it might not always work, and this is something that you guys can give me feedback on, but it's supposed to look up, well, okay, let me back up. When you're using key files, as I explained, and I'll get my notes back here, you have a directory called .ssh, and that's where authorized keys are stored. That's where your key files generally go into. That's where you can do config, your config direct or file there and make directives in there, add directives. So I've set it up to look in your .ssh directory, even though it should. And I've noticed though that it doesn't, I don't know, there's some, you guys can give me feedback on that. So I don't know, as I've said, keep my files, my key files in my .ssh directory. I have another directory. So there is a command in Connect to SSH that allows you to update the default path. So let's look at that. This is a hidden command here. And it is actually on the page. But if we issue Connect2SSH space config-update space key_path, we can update the default path. So let's take a look at this. And you might be going, huh? What are you talking about, Jeremy? Hold on. I'll show you. So let me just backspace, get rid of all this, and paste this in here. And if I hit enter, you will see that the current value right now is to go into your home directory and then .ssh. And you don't put any trailing slashes or anything on this. If you're saying, no, Jeremy, I want to put my keys in, say, opt keys, you could add this, or no trailing slash. That way, the system would always go into the opt keys directory to look for your keys. And then that way, you'd only have to type in your key name. So you could just type in, like my CentOS dev key, or my, NAS key, or my whatever it is the key name is. So you can actually change this value. So let's go ahead and change that to say, we'll just put this outside because I changed it to home. So we'll do home developer. And it's going to ask you, do you want to make these changes? You have to backspace and type in yes, otherwise it won't. So I enter yes. And now we have updated that path. Okay, so let's go edit our user account. So let's go to help again, because I kind of got off topic, or well, not off topic, but I went off to a different tangent there to show you that. So if I look here, you will see we can update an account by using update-account or UA. So let's do that. And I know that my account is 1. The ID is 1. I only have one account in here. And you could look it up by doing the LA account there. So let's do this. Let's do Connect2SSH, UA. And it's going to say, OK. Pick a server it's located on, ID. And it's on that. Oh, actually, that's one thing I want to change. Yes, that's right. So that we don't have to type it in. So you have to type in the ID. The server ID is 1. And then the username is CentOS dev. Now I can edit the username. I can edit this and change it to a key file. So I'm going to change backspace, get rid of password, change it to key, hit enter. And you can see here now, now the path for keys is going to start looking in the home developer directory. It won't look anywhere else. So if I wanted to store some keys in opt, that's not going to work. I would have to, the only thing I could do there is the first // You have to think about where you want your keys. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and, I know my key file is my machine key because that's what we typed in. I can't, when we created it, well, that's what it is. And if you're saying to Jeremy, well, how would I specify a directory? Well, if I had a directory in there, say in home developer, say maybe I had client keys, and then I had another one, internal keys. I could then come here and say, if I need to go into the client keys directory, I could go client keys and then directory to get into that directory. But we don't. Just use my machine key, hit enter. Now we'll take this out because I want the remote directory. When we connect, I want the remote directory to just go into the home directory when we actually connect. And then we'll leave the mount point as is. And then we won't make any note changes. And now it's going to say, look, here's what I'm about to change. This will update the following. So do you want this, yes or no? I'll go ahead and type in yes, hit enter, and there we go. It's been updated. So now let's go ahead and connect, and it should use that key. So I'll clear. I'll do Connect2SSH go 1, hit enter to do an SSH connection. So see, now we've got the passphrase for the my key. It's using my key.
This is what we didn't have the passphrase for in an earlier example, but now we've reset all this.
Yeah, we've reset this. So now I entered my key and I'm in on SSH. So boom, there it is. I didn't have to go type it in. I didn't have to do -I. And now my key is not even in a default location. It's not in the .ssh directory.
So you're super secure.
I didn't have to find any of that information. So let's do a file system mount though, because I'm going to disconnect from SSH. So we're just going to repeat that. Well, actually, hold on. Let's first make sure we're not connected because we keep, okay, good. We're not connected. So now let's repeat that. So we'll do go 1 FS, boom. And now it's asking for the passphrase of my key. It's using the key to connect through SSHFS.
Mm-hmm.
I hit enter. It's already connected in the background. In fact, if I go here, I can go in here and see files. It's just, this is programmed with like a 10-second delay again to give it time in case you're connecting over the internet and it needs to, do some, sometimes it's a little slower. On a local LAN, it's probably going to take 1 to 3 seconds. But, again, it's just got a delay there. So now, again, we already saw it in the GUI there, but if I ls it, there it is. I mean, how simple is that? And then, okay, I want to disconnect. Connect to SSH end 1. Now it is unmounting that directory. And if I clear this, I go up to LS, boom, done. You see how much easier that is than say going and where was my notes here? Wrong thing.
Okay.
Going.
So let's start talking a little bit about where we can get this tool, because where we're going to, where it's going to be on Get, but you're also going to have a download page, correct?
Yes. So what I'm going to do, and again, that will be very useful when you have a lot of them. You might be sitting there saying, well, Jeremy, it's only one, but it's a lot faster than typing in all this information and over and over.
Anybody who's going to be administering a lot of servers, and a lot of web admins do, you might be working from home, you might be SSHing into many accounts. This is going to make it a lot easier.
Exactly. It's going to make it tons easier. So where you're going to be able to get this and find information will be on Git, and I'll have links below to all this too, including Joe's videos is explaining all this in great detail, but I've also created just a few quick videos that are like 3 or 4 minutes to explain like the update tool or whatever. So that way, you can go straight to it. All this will be at cyberws.com, www.cyberws.com/bash/connect2SSH. So you see up here, right now it's a protected page. It won't be though by the time this video goes live.
Right, and the link will be in the description for this video.
Correct. And then so I will put you'll see here, I got a little bit of work to do. Joe and I are doing this. We're discussing this. This video, honestly, I think it's going to need to come out probably sometime Saturday, but we will, because it's getting late here and Google's have to crunch on it. But I will have video links to Joe's video. I also have a link to a few just quick videos. So if you just say, I just need to know how to add an account, I've already listened to all of Joe's videos, you'll be able to see that. It's also going to have where to download it and the update method, because you will want to get updates. So because this tool will be worked on, I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear both the good and the bad, because I think this is a very powerful tool. Like I said, I looked high and low for something like this. And yes, there are pieces that will allow you to do some kind of connections, or like FileZilla, but FileZilla is not doing the exact same thing, but you can make connections to remote servers. But at the same time, it doesn't allow you to really do a lot of SSHing, just straight SSH commands. And then you have PuTTY.
I think the big advantage to this is that you mix and match per server what you want to do.
Yeah, and the thing is, you can have, if I can speak here correctly, we're getting close to 3 hours, I think. But the thing that is very strong about this is you can have some password accounts, you can have some key-based accounts, and again, if you have a bunch, we're only showing one, and I'm only going to show one here, but if I run this and go, say, LA, or let's list accounts for starters, and I go to text, we only have one account, but imagine dozens or hundreds of accounts in here. And then it's like, I have 12 accounts signed to CentOS web server. We just changed the IP for that. You don't have to remember typing it in what that IP is. You just have to go up here and edit this in this connect to SSH. And then all you have to remember is, oh yeah, I don't have to now, if I'm typing this in manually, I have to remember to go up here to SSH and type in a different host name. All you have to remember is I just go type in connect to SSH, go count 24. And it doesn't matter that the IP's changed. Once you've changed it and connect to SSH, boom, instead of going to this IP, you're going to that IP, and you don't have to fill your head with that knowledge that you usually don't need to have, because if you're on the server, you can ask the server, you do an IF config ask and get that. So it's really simple. It really manages this. Now, a few things Joe said he wanted to ask you. If you want to help contribute, you're someone who wants to help package this, or you want to work with me on getting a GUI interface as well, just to help have this, because I think the command line is important, especially if you're like, again, a bigger organization and you want to have like a central authentication server, and you have, say, 10 system admins that would connect to that authentication server, and then that authentication server connects to your various database, web servers, etc. You could put connect to SSH on that authentication server, and then you could manage your accounts that way. Be a lot easier, because you just log into one server, and then that server holds all the information. And in my videos, I'll show you how you can change where the database is, how the SQLite database is an SQLite database. You can make changes and edit that. Be careful though. I will in my videos, because we're getting kind of long, show you how you back it up and all that.
Yeah, I think the thing that you're trying to say is that we are very much open to ideas. If you want to do a GUI, if you want to do packaging, if you have any input, check this out. You can download it, you can play with it yourself. But this is going to be a community probably will build around this particular application. So open for all kinds of, I'm sure probably some people are watching it already. They watch the video and go, "Ooh, I got an idea." So yeah, this is going to be a community-based thing.
Exactly. There's already a few things I've seen I use this every day, but I don't go edit accounts often. And I'm already seeing a few things that are kind of could be tweaked and edited and that type of thing. So yes, definitely you can provide feedback and, that kind of stuff, because I need to know what you're enjoying and what's really even not working, because you might say, well, why do I have to type this in? But the bottom line is, once you have your data in the system, as you saw, connecting is so
easy.
Really just simple. I mean, look at this.
I
think that's it. But
we got to wind this up, dude, because we've been going on forever. But this is just absolutely this awesome little tool. I hope that those of you who have stuck with this entire video, maybe you've watched it in segments over time, whatever the deal is. Thank you for watching. Thank you to Jeremy for putting the program together and being a part of the latest Mr. Desktop and Mr. Server. Any closing thoughts, Jeremy, before I wind it down?
No, there's a lot. Like I said, I'll have videos if you're confused that Joe's going to be the expert in training people at home, but I'm going to have a channel with just a few videos on explaining only this. I have no interest in going distro showing all that, but I have created, I do have a channel I have uploaded just how to just if you need to know editing account or something. So I won't get into some of the more complex things that I get into there, because we're getting long on time and a lot of people won't care about some of the configuration changes you can make to it. But it is I think it's a tool once you get used to, just you're going to find a lot of usage out of it. And I realize, as Joe said, that it's gone long, but we wanted to explain the underlying technology to show, look, this is open. What this tool is doing, it's open, it's bashed. You can look through it.
The other thing is simply the fact that nobody else is doing this. We started out with known stuff. We've started out with known tools. But by the time we got to the end of this video, gang, we can't find anybody else in the Linux world who's doing this stuff.
No, we can't.
Which is why we did it. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
and that's the bottom line. And I could say more, but I think we're getting, like you said, we're getting kind of long, and we did have a little bit of technical snafu. So I do apologize, and listeners and viewers that there was a few things that with audio that we now know that Joe and I actually learned together a little trick on some audio stuff
how
at
to
the
fix. Yeah, all right, man. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you for watching the video. Check out easylinux.com. Check out Easy Linux on Facebook. Check out freedompenguin.com. And also check out the Cyber Web Solutions website as well. And you can figure out what Jeremy is into, because he does a lot more than write really cool little nifty utilities for working with SSH. You can find out more there. Links to everything you need to be in the video description. I'm out, man. Thank you so much. Talk to you again soon.
Bye, everyone.